Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I am absolutely wonderful, Conrad. Not as good as you, based on our conversation prior to hitting the record button, but I'm working on it, man. You're my hero. I'm chasing you.
Oh my gosh, listen to you. I'm so excited to be with you. We have got, first of all, to apologize. We're a day late recording. I had some business to take care of yesterday, and that threw me off my game. And so we're dropping this a little later, but we're going to make it worth your while because we've got a very special episode today. We're going to be watching the now infamous Bret Screwed Bret episode of Monday Night Raw. Now, Eric Bischoff has never actually seen this episode, but he's heard about it because this is also the episode where we not only got maybe the debut of the Mr. McMahon character, where he really doubled down on becoming this television heel persona, but it's also the episode where Rick Rude appeared on both shows, Raw and Nitro. Well, Eric never actually sat down and watched that Raw, so we're going to be doing that today. But before we get into what happened way back when, let's talk about what's happened over the last week or so in professional wrestling. Lots of news and notes to cover. Maybe the biggest story over the weekend was the huge Saudi Arabian event for WWE. Of course, I think most folks know they're making like $50 million per event over there. So this is a WrestleMania all on its own. And what a incredible card this was. We saw John Cena and Solo Sikoa. I know you had a chance to see that. It felt like they're at least preparing the farewell of John Cena to the WWE universe. And he did what you would expect John Cena to do in that scenario. Solo gets the big win. What'd you think of the match over the weekend, Eric?
I've always been a fan of John Cena's, always, as the person, John Cena, the professional John Cena, certainly the performer, John Cena, but what a guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he is not only putting people over, but he's making them look like $1 million in the process.
Yeah.
He is just, and some of the stuff that John was doing, you know, how old is John? I don't even know. Got to be mid-40s, right?
Yeah, he's in his late 40s, I think. Let's throw it in the old Google.
And he's just, for a guy that's been out of the business really as long as he has.
46
years old. He's been out of the business for what, 5 years? Something like that?
Close, yeah.
And to be able to just go into the closet, grab the boots, throw your stuff in the bag, let's go wrestle. The level that he's performing at and bringing out the best of the people that he's working with, I just have so much admiration for John. It was a fantastic match. I loved watching it, really enjoyed it. And I just can't say enough great things about John Cena. He's an example of how to end your career. He's doing such a great job.
Totally agree. What an incredible performer, what an incredible career. Of course, as he's going through the curtain on the way up the ramp, Michael Cole referred to him as the greatest of all time. And that's certainly got to be in this discussion, at least from a WWE perspective and what he's meant to business. But I'm really hung up on the fact that, I know I just had to Google it, I'm sort of shocked that Cena's quote unquote only 46. I mean, CM Punk is 45. We know Jericho is over 50. And I mean, think about what an incredible 18 months or so Jeff Jarrett's had. That dude's 57. He's 9 years older than Cena, or 11 years older than Cena. I just, it's so impressive when you really think about it, especially when you add the context of this is not something he's done as his primary daily activity. He just, have boots will travel, I suppose. And he made the big trip over and in the process made Solo. And speaking of making guys, boy, WWE is doubling down on Logan Paul. And we've sort of freestyled what that could look like for him over the course of the next year or so. But he is now our United States champion. I think that was his agent who snuck him the brass knucks in his effort against Rey Mysterio. And considering his, outside the WWE bubble level of social media following and fame and notoriety, this is a home run for WWE, I feel like. What'd you think?
And you know, I don't want to be redundant, but Rey Mysterio, how old is Rey?
It's a great question.
Mid-40s. He started wrestling when he was 4, so it's kind of hard to keep track.
I'm going to make sure I have everyone's age for every show as we move forward. He's 48 years old. He'll be 49 next month.
I didn't think he was that old. To be able to go out there and perform at the Rey Mysterio that I saw yesterday when I watched Crown Jewel certainly was not the Rey Mysterio that we saw, you know, in the mid-90s in terms of what he was capable of doing in the ring. But he still over-delivered. He looked so good, and the match was believable. I mean, I love, in the color commentary, by the way, play-by-play and color, hats off to Michael Cole and Wade Barrett. I just thought the color commentary and the play-by-play it's as close to perfect for the type of play-by-play and color that I enjoy. It was as close to perfect as it can be. I mean, they reinforced the story. Wade Barrett really brought me into the mind of both, more so Rey Mysterio than Logan, but he did such a great job of painting the picture and enhancing the picture that we were seeing visually. Cannot put over Michael Cole and Wade Barrett enough. They really deserve it. But the match was phenomenal. Just a phenomenal match. There was 2 things. One is when the agent came out with the brass knucks, and then who was it that ran out and made the save, got the knucks away. I don't remember the name.
Escobar.
Yeah, Escobar. He grabbed the knucks. Okay, save the day. And then he went to chase the agent that brought the knucks to the ring. And when he set the knucks up on the ring apron, I went, oh, damn it. I wish he would have just dropped the knucks on the floor and someone would have had to go out, or Logan would have had to go out to get those knucks. Then it would have been 100% believable, but it was a tell. I knew what was going to happen once they set those knucks on the ring apron. But that's a little tiny thing, and maybe it was intentional. They wanted you to know that was going to happen. But the match was phenomenal. Ray he's just, you know, I think we got to revise the Mount Rushmore thing.
Yeah.
Maybe add a couple to it, because I think Ray needs to be up there, man. He is just single-handedly created such an interest in lucha and what he's contributed because of his performance and his professionalism. What he's contributed to the industry is he deserves to be in every conversation when it comes to Mount Rushmore. He did a phenomenal job. Logan Paul blows me the fuck away, pure and simple. I just don't understand how he's become as phenomenal as he is with such a limited amount of experience and time in the industry. I mean, it's not just that he can go in there and athletically perform, which he does exceedingly well, but he's got psychology. His timing is, he's got the timing of a 25-year-old top performer. He knows how to work the crowd. It's natural for him. He doesn't have to learn it. It's already there. And I think that, combined with his sense of timing, he doesn't rush anything.
Yep.
He's a step and a half ahead of himself, and he takes his time getting there, which makes everything feel so believable. And it allows you to get sucked in emotionally and allow you to forget that, oh, I'm watching a professional wrestling event. No, you're watching drama happen right in front of you, and you're sucked into it. I just can't say enough about it. It was so good. I was so glad I watched it.
My impression is that Logan Paul just doesn't get nervous. I feel like he's got nerves of steel, and I think that's the reason he's so comfortable and his timing is so good and he's able to be so patient. I know a lot of times when people get anxious, they talk faster, they move faster, they're trying to rush through it. He's really letting things breathe. He does have that sense of timing, and I think that's pretty astute that you recognized and pointed that out. And we should also point out that over the weekend, the main event is the 41-year-old LA Knight lost his championship match to the 38-year-old Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns continues now. His incredible run, his undefeated streak continues. A lot of people were convinced well, if Roman Reigns is really taking time off, they're going to switch the title here. I was never sold on that happening at Crown Jewel unless the Saudi Arabian folks had a little bit of influence over creative. Hey, if we're paying you this amount of money, we need to see a title switch. Maybe they did ask for that. Maybe they checked that box with Logan Paul. I don't know. But either way, LA Knight, not victorious in his quest to pin Roman Reigns. And now a lot of people are wondering, what's next for LA Knight? He had this incredible momentum going into it. I'm sure he's going to be super over with the crowd again. He's still got, I mean, they've been behind him whether he was the champ or not. I don't know that that would necessarily change now. Would you program him with Logan Paul for WrestleMania, or what would you think his plan would be from here to that big show?
God, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I don't think I'd pair him up with Logan Paul. I'd have to think about that some more. I haven't thought about it at all. I don't think the loss to Roman is going to mean one bit of difference. Yeah. I don't think it's going to stall his momentum. If anything, it's going to make his fan base want it even more. And that's what you hope for. You want the fans to want it more than LA Knight wants it. You want the fans to want it more than the company wants it. You want the fans to become undeniable in their desire to see LA Knight advance. And I don't think it's going to be very difficult at all for LA Knight to pick up right where he left off. I really don't. And if anything, I think it's, in a weird way, I think it's going to help him.
Well, somebody who doesn't need any help right now, they've got all the momentum in the world, is Cody Rhodes. He was victorious over the weekend, besting Damian Priest. But the big report out of WrestleNomics, our pal over there, Brandon Thurston, WWE merch is the #1 moving product for WWE. But when it comes to talent specific, Cody Rhodes is the #1 merch mover in the entire company for 2023.
Wow.
Stone Cold Steve Austin's on the list. John Cena's on the list. LA Knight's on the list. Roman Reigns on the list. But Cody Rhodes, and I see this comment every time he's on TV. If I happen to be on or around social media, I see people saying pretty consistently, Cody is the top guy. And I know there was some debate early in the year. Should they have gone with Sami at WrestleMania? We know they went with Cody, but Cody, much like everybody before him, was not able to beat Roman Reigns. And now there's been more recent conversation. Well, it's LA Knight now. LA Knight's the top guy. But
fans are so fickle, aren't they?
It's interesting to me. You know, it's a great problem to have if you're WWE, to have so many talent who are connecting with the audience the way they are, but perhaps none have connected as big as Cody Rhodes. Do you consider Cody Rhodes to be the top guy? And with Roman taking this reported leave of absence, does his star shine even brighter?
I think it will. I think it'll give Cody more camera time. And Cody, you know, I mean, not only is he a great performer, that goes without saying, but he exudes a level of class and professionalism that I haven't seen in a long, long time. And that's not to suggest that there aren't others who are very, very professional and have, and come to the ring with class and represent the company and the genre. Just as importantly, it's advancing the genre when you have performers as phenomenal as Cody Rhodes and LA Knight and so many others. I don't want to leave people. I always hesitate to name people because you're automatically, you run the risk of leaving somebody out that deserves it. But there's just a level of class and professionalism along with the phenomenal athletic and storytelling ability. Definitely Cody #1. And I think this is again, I'm glass half full. This is me looking at WrestleMania, which will be here in about a minute and a half.
Yes.
In terms of life. I just think it sets him up even more so for WrestleMania.
Cody Rhodes.
Same thing though, you know, it's like Cody's fans want it.
Yes.
That's why they're buying the merch. They want it more than Cody does. That's a gift from God. It's not a gift. You work for it. You earn it. But a blessing nonetheless.
If you're wondering, Cody Rhodes is 38. By the way,
it wasn't like I'm testing you here.
I'm going to be ready from now on.
I'm sorry.
And I want you guys to be ready. Stop sending money to big insurance companies that profit off of not paying your bills. Did you know that 48 million claims of Obamacare last year were denied? That's 1/5 of claims that are going to get rejected. Do you want to take that chance? Listen, here's the deal. Health insurance sucks. It's confusing, it's expensive, and it's frustrating. There is a better way. Welcome to the alternative. Crowd Health was created to get rid of headaches of the health insurance industry. For $175 for an individual, or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll also get telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and more. All this without doctors' networks getting in the way. Let Crowd Health help with your healthcare needs. You can get started today for just $99 per month for the first 3 months when you use the code WRESTLE to get the healthcare you deserve. Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com and use our code WRESTLE to get started for just $99 per month for the first 3 months. So Eric, we were talking about, the top guy in WWE and what a great problem it is to have this many guys that are over in the WWE. And I saw something that I shared with you on Reddit over the weekend that I was fascinated by. It was, believe it or not, and just bear with me here, Eric. It was a conversation from Dave Meltzer. And I know you don't like Dave Meltzer. However, he pointed out AEW, they have so many people under contract. Joe Silva, who by the way is the former UFC matchmaker and Hall of Famer, would tell me we could have 300 people and 50 people under contract. We're still only going to have 10 stars either way because you can get only a certain number of people over. WWE understands this. And in the recap, it's written here. Dave says AEW doesn't need to keep adding guys to their TV, even if they're good. Dave says AEW has so many guys that are good and can have good matches, but quote, they're all over the place. He compares it to a UFC Saturday night show where he says the fighters are all good and the fights are all good, but quote, unless you're super hardcore, you don't care about any of them because they're not big names, end quote. Dave wants to see AEW focus on their core guys and help them get really over and become stars. And I sent this to you because I know that you dealt with this on the WCW side of things. And we've talked about that a long time, about how loaded you were at the top. You had Goldberg, you had Sting, you had Lex Luger, you had Ric Flair, you had Kevin Nash, you had Macho Man, you had DDP, on and on and on and on. You had those handful of 10 super over stars. And yes, you had a really strong tag division. And yes, you had great international talent. And yes, the cruiserweight matches were incredible. But the people who were really the needle movers were like those top 10 guys. And even when we take a look at like the top merch sellers this year for WWE, somehow John Cena and Stone Cold are still on the list. And yes, they're there with Roman Reigns and LA Knight and Cody Rhodes. But the point is there's only so much capacity, if you will, to have fans care about so many guys. And that was something we've never really pinpointed, but to hear a UFC guy, Joe Silva, say, we're only going to have 10 guys over. I thought, damn, I got to talk about that with Eric. What do you think about Joe Silva's comment? Whether we got 50 guys in the UFC or 300, no matter what, we're only going to have 10 guys over.
Yeah. And what's interesting is Dave makes these comments and, there's no arguing with premise of what he wrote. But what Dave doesn't do and isn't capable of doing is, he'll say, well, you got to get more guys over. Well, how the fuck do you do that? How do you get more guys over, Dave? How do you get one guy over? And Dave's whole angle on what makes a good booker, i.e. Tony Khan being Booker of the Year for 2 years in a row, absent any cohesive story, compelling stories, absent anything that looks like disciplined, well-executed, creative structure. It's just random throwing dream matches up against the wall for no apparent reason. to pop a number or to get this is also a verified, what is it? Verified, does he call it? Whatever, a well-deserved, this is awesome champ. Like, that's not getting guys over. Getting guys over is not only identifying the talent that has the charisma as well as the athletic ability. The athletic ability is important. In Dave's world, it's the most important. In my world, it's number 2 or 3. Because unless you've got charisma, that intangible magic that separates all those who can from those who become, anybody can learn, not anybody, because I've tried, anybody can learn how to play guitar if you're committed. What makes Stevie Ray Vaughan? What made B.B. King? What made Jimi Hendrix? And there are special people that have that magic, and you have to be able to identify it. And it's not based on what appears to be more often than not Olympic level floor gymnastics. It's that charisma combined with the athletic ability. I'm not shitting on that, but charisma first, and you have to have story. You're never going to get anybody over unless you put as much time and effort and discipline into creating a well-crafted story with an arc, with an intentional destination and a payoff that's going to create a massive amount of emotion in the fan base. That's what it takes. And that's the opposite of everything that Dave puts over. His 5-star match thing is just about the intensity and I guess the volume of high flying aerial athleticism. It's not what gets people over. And I agree with whoever the guy was from UFC. You could put 3, again, I often, when I'm critical or critiquing or offering an alternative perspective, call it whatever you want it. I try not to be negative for the sake of being negative. That's not my deal. But a lot of what forms my opinion and creates some of the emotion when I'm expressing that opinion is what I've learned by making wrong decisions. Not just what I've learned making good decisions. I shouldn't say there's no value, but there's far more value in mistakes and choices that you recognize as not the right ones than there is in the recognizing the decisions you made that were very successful. I learn more from mistakes. I learn more from failures. I study it. I analyze it. I remind myself. I've been there. In that long list of names that you gave, you left out Roddy Piper, you left out Hulk Hogan, and there were others. We had a whole cruiserweight division that were extremely talented, but at the very, very top, we were so dense, and that's what happens is you don't have the time, the television time, or if you've got 2 guys in a main event, and they're in your A story meaning it should get the most amount of television time throughout an episode consistently until that story has a resolution. But if you've got 2 of your top guys in your A story, and then you've got your B story coming up underneath it, let's throw LA Knight in that current kind of category because he's so over, you've got to give that guy television time because that's what the audience is demanding, right? And then you've got a C story, and then you've got a D story. Once you get into it, even with a 3-hour program on Raw, you start running out of time to do it effectively. And I'm not suggesting that every match should have a story because that's what, the trolls are going to come out with, after they hear this. Not every match can have a story because you don't have the time to dedicate to it. So you're going to have some, I'm calling it filler for lack of a better term right now because I can't think of it. But you're going to have matches that are designed really just to expose a talent, to try to get a talent a little more equity, a little more value to the audience, a little more experience perhaps, but they're not all going to have that well-crafted, disciplined arc because you don't have the time. And I think AEW is probably experiencing that. You know, Tony came out and said, I'm not going to make the same mistakes that Eric Bischoff did. Well, dude, yeah, you are. And then some, by the way.
Well, the thing,
so I agree with that. I just find it interesting how Meltzer, once the wheels are starting to fall off of AEW, he's kind of covering his ass by pointing out flaws. But in the meantime, he's been nothing but an advocate for them, while calling himself a journalist.
A lot of
making
people
excuses for every aspect of their failures. Nah, they're not failures, but lack of progress.
A lot of folks have a theory that his the way he's covered them has changed since Brawl Out. I haven't done enough investigating myself to really co-sign that, but it does feel like there's a shift in his coverage of AEW. And, you know, you said something a few minutes ago about how, you know, Dave was saying, hey, you just got to help some more guys get over. Well, how do you get somebody over? And I think the answer is pretty clear: television time. You know, you take a look at who is the quote unquote most over in AEW. It's MJF. He's also getting some of the most screen time. I'm not saying just one individual segment, but I'm saying threads throughout a show. I mean, it's not lost on me. John Cena was on every single show for 10 years. Therefore, John Cena, even when he's not actively wrestling anymore, is still in the top 10. And it's not like when you had Stone Cold on the show, Stone Cold will just come out for his one segment. No, there's going to be a thread. He's going to open with the promo. There's going to be some backstage skits, and he's going to do a run in, and then he's going to have a match. But you don't have that. You have a finite amount of TV time, but unfortunately it feels like you have an infinite roster at times. So you can't make everyone happy. So instead of everyone being able to get that MJF or Hulk Hogan treatment, take a look at the number of segments Hulk Hogan was in way back when on Nitro, when Nitro was at its peak. And people could be critical of that from a political standpoint and say, oh, he should be sharing the spotlight. Should he? Because
really,
because
dilute your show.
Well, my point was you're doing the best that, I mean, I had a conversation this past weekend with somebody who was pretty frustrated, with WWE and the way things have been going. And I'm like, well, this is as good as it's going to get. Like, objectively, if you step away from creative and you just take a look at the business as a whole, the business has never been stronger. Well, the same thing could be said when Hogan was on every other segment of Nitro. And people would be critical of that and say, oh, they should put Jericho in that spot and Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero. And how about this? I agree. Those guys would have better, more competitive matches. However, would the same number of people be watching the show? Probably not. They weren't stars yet. And I understand it's sort of like chicken or the egg at times. But I was just fascinated with that observation from a UFC guy. Doesn't matter if we got 50 guys or 300, we can only have 10 that are over.
But Conrad, isn't that true even in your business, in the mortgage industry?
It's true in every business.
In any sales position?
Yes.
You know, 10% of the people are going to make 90% of the money.
Yes.
And it is
the old 80-20 rule.
How many actors and actresses are out there that have amazing talent that we're never going to hear from?
Yeah.
They're never going to hear from because he can't guarantee box office.
Yeah.
They can't mitigate the risk of making a 50 or 60 or $100 million movie or a television series. You're going to go with the known commodity because it's a business. And the top 10% of the actors and actresses out there are probably making 80 or 90% of the money as a result. And the same thing is true in wrestling. You can't, this is not a democracy. This isn't an exercise in democracy. It's an exercise in creating emotion. And you do that with talent that has charisma and with storylines that will support it. It's not just, you said, well, you got to give more TV time. Giving somebody TV time without the foundation of great story and character development actually will work against you. Because it's just TV time for the sake of TV timing, unless it's compelling and interesting and creates emotion, you're boring your audience. They're not going to react to it. You can go out and have all the fucking 5-star matches you want to have. And if it's not creating emotion with the television audience and you're only satisfying that 10 or 15 or 20%, whatever it is, of the Dave Meltzer internet wrestling community that values, competitive matches at the highest level, you're boring 90% of the audience in the process. And MJF is getting the time he deserves, to the point where you're going to be careful you don't overexpose him. You got to keep them special. And that's where the art comes in. And it's how much is too much, how little is too little. Doesn't really matter as long as you have great creative supporting it. And that's the problem. Now you add 300 people on top of it that are under contract, and they're all miserable. In the beginning, they're all happy. They're getting their check in the mail every 2 weeks. They're paying their bills. They're going on vacation, putting money in the bank, investing. All things are all great financially, but that's not the only reason I think that performers, whether they be actors and actresses or musicians or stage actors, they do it for the love of performing. That's what draws them to it. That's what makes them special. And after a while, you get tired of the money. It gets to be a little boring. You're used to it. Your lifestyle has accommodated it, but yet you still have that desire to perform that's not being satisfied. And that's where, the frustration and the chatter, whether it be in WWE or AEW or anywhere else, it's all the same. It's not exclusive to AEW by any stretch, but that's where you have those conversations with people that are frustrated. And I try to tell people just, I get calls a couple times a year from people looking for advice.
Yeah.
What would you do? And my advice, especially in WWE, is be ready. Don't let your head get you down. Don't allow yourself to become frustrated and miserable and negative, because all it takes is one idea, LA Knight. All it takes is one situation where somebody gets hurt, or for whatever reason, the story kind of flops, and they're looking for that next person, and there's a lot of talent in WWE right now, or probably in AEW, well, for sure in AEW, that are walking around frustrated and trying to kick their cat and all kinds of other stuff because they're mad at the world, and they don't know, man. They could get a phone call tomorrow and their whole world could change. Just be prepared for that phone call. Be prepared for that opportunity. Don't let up on yourself. Keep working at it. Stay positive. Don't walk around moping and, showing the world how frustrated and disappointed you are and unmotivated you are because things aren't going your way in that moment. Maybe it's not been going your way for 6 months or a year, but you're still there. As long as you're still there, you have an opportunity. You just have to be ready for it.
Are you saying maybe it might not have been their day, their week, their month, or even their year?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be there for you. And so will Factor this holiday season. You might be looking for nutritious, convenient meals to keep you energized as we go through all these jam-packed days. Factor is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service, and they can help you fuel up fast for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, all with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, you'll eat well, and you'll stay on track with your healthy lifestyle, all while tackling your holiday to-dos. Too busy with holiday plans to cook, but want to make sure you're eating well? Well, with Factor, you can skip the extra trip to the grocery store. You can also skip all that chopping and prepping. Hey, even skip the cleaning up too. And you're still going to get all the flavor and the nutritional quality you need, all thanks to Factor's fresh, never frozen meals that are ready in just 2 minutes. Meaning all you have to do is heat and enjoy. They've got over 35 different weekly flavor-packed, fresh, never frozen meals that are all take care of you in under 2 minutes. Seriously, I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed this. We've had a few different meal delivery services on the show over the years. Factor is the only one I've stuck with. I'm still using it. And by the way, they've got premium ingredients too. Things like truffle butter. I've never seen that on another service like this. Broccolini, leeks, even asparagus. They've even got lunch to go. Maybe you don't have a microwave at work. Well, they got salad toppers and grain rolls. They can hook you up. They can also take care of breakfast. I think I mentioned that, but they've got an incredible assortment of things like, potato, bacon, and egg breakfast skillets, bacon and cheddar egg bites, apple cinnamon pancakes, something for everybody. They've also got cold pressed juices and shakes and smoothies, but really it's about the lifestyle stuff, right? So if you're looking to drop some lbs, the dietitian approved calorie smart options for you, they're 550 calories or less. Our buddy Double J, he's rocking the Protein Plus meals. There's 30 grams of protein or more per serving. Seriously, this is better for you. It's faster, it's cheaper, and it tastes better. So why not hook it up with Factor this November? Start eating well without all the hassle. You're going to get fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered right to your door. You slide the little carton off, you pop some holes in the plastic at the top, throw it in the microwave, and in 2 minutes you're eating. I eat mine right out of the carton. It's fantastic. Head right now to factormeals.com/83weeks50. Use our code 83weeks50. You'll get 50% off. That's code 83weeks50 at factormeals.com/83weeks50 to get 50% off. Man, we've got so much more to talk about on current stuff, but I feel like if we don't start our watch along soon, Eric, we're never going to get to it.
Well, but before we do, should we explain what's behind me here?
Well, listen, I enlisted some help from Mrs. B. And so on social media over the next couple of days, you're going to see what I'm calling Eric Bischoff, This Is Your Life. So stay tuned to 83 Weeks on social media. I'll post it on my social. Eric will post it on his, and maybe we'll do a little recap. But, with the holidays right around the corner, I got to using my genius in here. And we are going to do something on social media we're calling Eric Bischoff, This Is Your Life. So stay tuned to social media for that. But right now, get your Peacock out. It's season 5, episode 50. This is from, no, wait, I'm on the wrong show. Look at me.
Oh, I'm so glad, because I was having difficulty. You guys had to help me find this.
I'm like, wait a minute now. Yeah, because we got you locked and loaded. It's season 5, episode 44. What we're going to be watching today is from November 17th, 1997. Yeah, and I just gave you the wrong doggone code. How about that? So I hope you've got the right link. I do. I went to it, and there was the drop-down box when I got to this season 5. So I'm ready to go, brother, whenever you are. Yeah, before we clicked record today, Eric was like, I can't find it. And I said, just check your email. I'll send you a link. And then I went back to mine, and I'm like, oh shit, did I send the wrong link? We're hooked up and ready to go. It's season 5, episode 44. That's season 5, episode 44. This is the Bret Screwed Bret Monday Nitro from November 17th, 1997. So to give you guys a reminder, we're 8 days removed from the Survivor Series. And this is also very much the era where Nitro is 3 hours and Raw is 2 hours. So Nitro's had a 1 hour jump here on Monday Night Raw. Eric, I'm locked and loaded, ready to go. Are you ready on your end?
I am indeed. Yes, sir. Just want to make sure my volume was off so we don't get
some Echo Jones here. Here we go.
Go to YouTube jail.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. So it's season 5, episode 44, November 17th, 1997. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1, play.
In over 100 countries, in 7 different languages, to more than 500 million viewers each week, the World Wrestling Federation, the worldwide leader in sports entertainment.
Front to the eye by Helmsley. And, Helmsley, what the hell was... Helmsley just nailed the referee, a blatant shot. Then a belly-to-belly suplex. Here comes China. The referee is knocked out. And what is he doing? Rogers restraining on the tap out. First it was the Hitman, then Shawn Michaels, and now Helmsley and Michaels for the knockout. Not a tap out. We've got folks with. We'll see you next week. Good night, everybody. Our cameras kept recording as Commissioner Slaughter stopped the count, and you wouldn't believe what happened. Wait a minute. Now they're shoving Slaughter around it. Hey, hey! Slaughter's not going to take it anymore. Wait a minute. Michaels is not even in this match. Michaels getting pinned by Shamrock, and the WWF champion wasn't even in the match. It was Helmsley and Shamrock. Wait a minute. Sergeant Ken Shamrock, this can't happen, can it, JR? It's not an official victory. Michaels wasn't even in the match. Shawn Michaels can't believe it. Shawn Michaels knows that he can be beat by Ken Shamrock, the world's most dangerous man.
So Eric, that's a recap from the prior week. We're going to do the hot open here. Let's take a while. Let's listen to this. I love this feel.
It's got kind of a Nitro vibe.
Yeah, so David Sahadi put that opening package together. We actually broke it down on the Insiders over on adfreeshows.com. So be sure to check out our interview with David Sahadi, where we talk about the making of and the creation of that opening video. And that is a far cry from the way Monday Night Raw used to open. We're very much headed down towards this Attitude Era. Stone Cold is getting over like Rover, as you see with the signs in the crowd. I know you and I love that iconic classic Nitro entrance, but that's a pretty badass entrance right there. No?
No, it really, really is. A lot of energy. It's raw. It has a raw feeling to it. It's pretty phenomenal.
And here he comes. We talked about how you make stars, and I even said, hey, you start the show with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and what do you know? Here he is. We're still a handful of months before he became the man. As you may recall, he's the Intercontinental Champion, having won that strap at Survivor Series, or I'm sorry, at SummerSlam, but he got dumped on his head. He's been hurt ever since. So he got actually more over through this process, giving Stone Cold Stunners to the likes of Sergeant Slaughter and Jim Ross, but of course, most famously in September, Vince McMahon. He's still the Intercontinental Champion here, going to be embroiled in a bit of a feud with The Rock. But what we're building towards is In Your House D-Generation X. And you can tell in the title picture, it's going to be Ken Shamrock challenging the world champion Shawn Michaels. We're just 8 days removed from the Montreal Screwjob. And I think a lot of folks assumed the next natural opponent for Shawn Michaels would be Owen Hart. And we know Owen winds up getting re-signed. He gets a bump. He gets a big new contract. And he debuts as the Black Heart and briefly has a bit of a skirmish with Shawn Michaels in December. But very quickly, Shawn moves on to The Undertaker in January. So no real main event opportunity there of any substance for Owen Hart. But Ken Shamrock, I felt like in 1998, was going to be one of the tippy top guys. I thought he would have been an incredible opponent for Stone Cold Steve Austin, because I think Stone Cold comes across as so real and so authentic, and so does Ken Shamrock. Was Ken Shamrock ever on your radar for WCW?
Not for WCW. He was certainly on my radar. I enjoyed watching him in WWE, but for all the reasons that you pointed out early on, by 1997, I wasn't looking for any more top talent. More than I could manage. Again, going back to what we talked about as the show opened up. So certainly well aware of him. Enjoyed his work. I loved his believability, his credibility, obviously with his MMA background, but still he was able to work. He wasn't just an MMA guy. Definitely on my radar, but not someone that I was hoping to see end up in WCW.
We see The Rock here. He's taken over, or trying to take over rather, as the leader, if you will, of the Nation of Domination. And you see the rest of the crew coming down. This era of the Monday Night War, 1997, we'll call it the winter, Q4 of 1997. I mean, you're headed towards the biggest pay-per-view in WCW history. Sting and Hulk Hogan. I know that when you first kicked off Nitro, you were paying really close attention to what WWE was doing and would even go on the air and give away their taped show results. At this point, you're firmly in the lead. I mean, you have just been dominating for so long at this point. Have you pulled the foot off the gas as far as just keeping up with WWE and are now focusing more on your own product because you're so far ahead, or what?
I think so. You know, in the beginning, giving away their finishes, starting 2 minutes or so before they started and, you know, doing the overruns, which had never been done before. There was a lot of stunts that I kind of created in the beginning to get the audience's attention, to stir the pot, create some controversy, because, you know, we know how that works. But by this time, 1997, I wasn't relying on those stunts nearly as much as I was in the very beginning, because it wasn't necessary any longer. And I don't know that I consciously said, oh, I got to focus more on my own product, but it just evolved that way.
We should mention that Nitro opens up with a clean shaven Rick Rude. The NWO are going to open the show. Rick Rude's going to be appearing there, and you're going to introduce him. And Dave Meltzer would write, before getting into storyline matters, Rude stated that, quote, Shawn Michaels never beat Bret Hart. Vince McMahon told the referee to ring the bell and rob Bret Hart of the title, end quote. And Meltzer says Rude, in the truest time-honored tradition of the business, a day or two after debuting with the WWF on August 4th in Atlantic City and appearing without signing a contract, called Bischoff up and the two opened dialogue. Whether they agreed at that point or held it off for the opportune moment, or whether Rude or one of the very few WWF television personalities to have not signed a contract contacted Bischoff again this past week, figuring the timing would never be so perfect for his leverage, is unknown. He was among the group really upset with how McMahon handled things, although it would probably be incorrect to describe this as anything more than a monetary deal that had been in some form in the works for 3 months. So let's talk about that. Had you had a preliminary conversation with Rude before, or how does this appearance come to be?
Again, Dave Meltzer, absolutely wrong. There was no preliminary conversation. It wasn't about Rick Rude and leverage. I hadn't spoken to Rick Rude in I don't know how long, until the night that all the things went down in Montreal. So everything that Dave said is bullshit. All of it. It's a lie. He made it up in his head to try to sound like he had some inside information or some insight as to what could possibly be. And he was absolutely 1000% phony and wrong. Here's what happened. I was at home. I wasn't even watching the pay-per-view from Montreal. Sunday night, I'm on my couch. I don't know what I was watching. Just finished dinner, relaxing, thinking about what I'm going to do the next day. My phone rings. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Sunday night, who's calling me? I didn't recognize the number. I picked up the phone. It was Rick Rude. He proceeded to, and this was like minutes after everything went down. Rick Rude called me, and he was, when I say pissed, he was that quiet pissed. He wasn't like, you won't believe what you're not going to believe what just happened. They just screwed Bret Hart. It wasn't that. It was a much more deliberate but intense Rick Rude. And keep in mind, I had known Rick since, God, a couple years out of high school. It's not like we didn't know each other pretty well. We had a lot of mutual friends. Before I ever got into wrestling, we had a lot of mutual friends. I knew Rick before I got into the business. So we had a pretty good relationship already, at least the foundation for one. We didn't hang out together or anything like that, but we had a good relationship. And Rick proceeded to tell me what he just saw. And he was livid with Vince McMahon. He was livid with the entire situation. And he just flat out asked me, have you got any room? I said, sure, I'll make room for you, Rick. And keep in mind, Rick couldn't wrestle. Rick was under a Lloyd's of London policy, which is why you saw him in the ring with the beard, but he didn't get physical. He couldn't. But I knew Rick. I'd worked with Rick in WCW. As I said, I've known Rick for a long time. I'll find a way to make a guy like Rick Rude work into the system. We had that conversation. It was nothing more than a result of what happened in Montreal. And we cut the deal. We may have cut the deal over the phone. I don't even recall. I think we cut the deal over the phone. I just sent him a contract. Had my attorneys send him a contract. But yeah, it was quick and easy, but there was no preliminary. It wasn't planned months in advance. It was, all the bullshit that Dave wrote about was absolutely, like so much of the other bullshit that he writes about, without any foundation at all.
Had you not spoken to Rick since he had been on WWF TV at all?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
When you guys are going to pull off a pretty cool moment here where we get to see him on both shows the same day, knowing that you're the guy who used to give the finishes away for Raw. That's right up your alley now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who has the idea about the facial hair adjustment? Do you recall?
Me. Yep.
You just want to make it very apparent that's a tape show.
Yeah, it was kind of like rub their nose in it.
Yeah.
You know, just remind everybody.
Yeah.
Their tape. I'm live.
Yes. Is that one of your proudest moments? Just as, in the Monday Night War? I mean, just in terms of, you know, like I know once upon a time, hey man, we'll debut and we'll have Lex Luger and they won't know. And then we'll have their women's champion come over and drop the title. I mean, like, so you've had a few of these little, oh yeah, I'm getting under their skin now. And I love that about you. Does this make the list?
Oh, it's on the list, but certainly not the greatest. You know, I think, I mean, it was tough to beat the Lex Luger moment.
Yeah.
Not only because it was so well executed, nobody found out. Everybody in WWE thought he was still under contract. And I just knew that was going to be effective. So that to me is the highlight of the kind of stunts that I pulled. But there's, you know, the Rick Rude showing up on our show was definitely right up there, but just not the biggest moment. And the thing with Luger is it set the tone. It subconsciously and probably consciously among some of the audience just sent the message to everybody that you cannot afford to miss an episode of Nitro because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You just don't know. And you want to be there and experience it live. You don't want to hear about it the next day and go, shit, should have been watching it. Damn it.
We're watching an old episode of Monday Nitro here, or I'm sorry, Monday Night Raw here. And we see Brian Christopher, who was seated out at the desk doing color commentary, taking his dad's spot, if you will, alongside Jim Cornette and Jim Ross, because in the ring, it's Jerry Lawler wrestling Mark Mero. Mark Mero, of course, is managed by Sable. And when Mark Mero first comes out to the ring, again, he's no longer the Johnny B. Bad character. He's Marvelous Mark Mero, and he's wrestling in boxing trunks. And he had a little confrontation with Butterbean, who's in the crowd. And of course, we know that we're going to do Brawl for All in 1998 and two WrestleManias from now. We're even going to see Butterbean just really lay waste to Bart Gunn. But this is one of the first times we would see Butterbean on WWE programming. And you see, they're really making Sable as a focal point here. I mean, the match is almost background to what's happening on the outside with Sable. What was it about the way they presented Sable that just resonated with the audience so well?
Well, there's the obvious.
Is that it? Is that it, really?
We all know that stuff sells.
Yes. Sells itself, actually.
Yes.
You don't have to talk it up too much.
No, it's just right there in your face.
Yeah.
Figuratively and sometimes literally, as we've seen on Monday Night Raw back in that era. You know, I don't think, you know, Sable didn't do that much. She wasn't that integral. You know, she didn't carry a lot of dialogue. She didn't often get too physical, but she was just, I mean, she was just a presence. I mean, we just saw, you know, she reached in there and wrapped a belt or whatever it is around Jerry's neck and pulled him off. It looked pretty lame. So it wasn't anything she did physically. It's how she appeared that did the trick for her. Predominantly male audience, 18 to 34. It worked.
You kind of forget that Mark Mero's finishing move was the TKO. And then when you see it back, you're like, wow, Brock Lesnar stole his wife and his finish.
Mero looks good here.
Dude, I love this version of Mark Mero. Yes.
He's got a much, much better look than he did with the longer hair. Butterbean, you know, I used Butterbean in Hulk Hogan's Celebrity Championship Wrestling over on CMT back in the day.
Oh, wow.
What a great guy.
I mean, Mark Mero looks like an action figure right here. It's amazing to me that this version of Mark Mero didn't connect more. I know he's playing a heel, but this guy is as legit badass as it gets. And I know he was, you know, doing a little cosplay as Little Richard there for a little while, but this version of him, by the way, you can really see they're badgering Sable here. They're going to take a break. You know what? Let's go ahead and pause right now. We're at 17:23. I'm going to stop it down at 17:30. This is segment 1 of Bret Screwed Bret. And before we get into that, I need to give everybody a heads up. I think I've told this story here before on the show. But my daughter came to me looking for last minute tickets. She forgot there was some big concert in town at our new amphitheater in town called the Arabian. I thought, well, hey, I got friends in radio. I hit up Casio to see if we could get some comps, something like that. It was to no avail. It was the fastest sellout in history. My daughter found a ticket reselling website that was literally with her back against the concrete, the last row, the worst seat in the house. You're at the very tippy top of the arena. The tickets were $172 a pop. For $200, I got her front row center, all thanks to Game Time. I don't think I can give you a much better testimonial than that. I knew I could trust Game Time because they had last minute deals on same day events. So yeah, let me recap. The show was at 7. I bought these tickets at 3. 4 hours before the show started, we got the deal of a lifetime using the Game Time app. They've got last minute tickets. They've got flash deals. They've got zone deals, and they've got it for everything. Like not just concerts, but football and basketball and baseball and theater and comedy and wrestling. Seriously, I love the Game Time app. I love it because it gives you a chance to view what your seat is going to look like. It's one thing to look at a seat map. It's another to see that POV. Oh, this is what my view will be? Okay, I'm in. I like that. Not only that, but talk about peace of mind. The Game Time guarantee means you always get the best price. You see, if you find tickets in the same section and row for less money, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. I can't recommend this enough. It is the place to find last minute seats. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code WEEKS, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code WEEKS, that's WEEKS, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, Eric, I guess I should probably rewind just a little bit here. I'm going to go to 17 minutes and 20 seconds. I know that you paused a little bit after that because I didn't realize we were going right to the Bret Screwed Bret thing. We'll talk a little bit more about Rick Rude and Sable on the other side of this, but I want us to listen to the whole thing because this is important context for the character building of Mr. McMahon. And we know the name of this very podcast is 83 Weeks because Eric Bischoff didn't beat Vince McMahon one time. He beat him 83 times in a row. He beat him a lot more than 83 times, boys and girls, but 83 times in a row. And what winds up breaking that streak is when Vince McMahon becomes Mr. McMahon and agrees to an in-ring match with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and that breaks the streak. But that is about 6 months from now. So this is sort of the seeds of what is going to become the Mr. McMahon character. So I'm going to track the audio starting at 17 minutes and 20 seconds. Again, we're on season 5, episode 44. This went down on November 17th, 1997. We're going to see a sit down between Vince McMahon and Jim Ross. We're at 17 minutes and 20 seconds. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1, play.
JR asked some questions like this one.
Let's cut right to the chase. 7 days ago at the Survivor Series, did you or did you not screw Bret Hart?
How about that for a little bumper action? And then they went to commercial, a great commercial. I'll track the commercial, but I just love that cliffhanger before the promo.
That was well done.
I'm 6'10", 328 pounds. I was a consensus All-American.
Played football for the Dallas Cowboys.
My jersey was retired at Florida State.
I was the ultimate fighting champion.
When you step through those ropes, bad things do happen.
Had over 200 stitches.
I've suffered a dozen concussions.
Broken bones.
I've separated shoulders.
Damn near broke my neck.
I've blown out knees.
But I still got up.
This is who I am.
This is what I do.
I'm not really an athlete.
This isn't real.
Try lacing my boots.
Another little David Sahadi special there promoting the brand. And when we come back, we see Davey Boy Smith opening up the door here for Bret Hart at Survivor Series. Let's track it.
Apparently already closed the door on his WWF career.
I've given my 30-day notice with WWF, and right now I'm under contractual review with both the WCW and the WWF. I'm leaning strongly towards going one way.
In the end, his actions spoke volumes.
Let's cut right to the chase. 7 days ago at the Survivor Series, did you or did you not screw Bret Hart?
Some would say, I screwed Bret Hart. Bret Hart would definitely tell you, I screwed him. I look at it from a different standpoint. I look at it from the standpoint of the referee did not screw Bret Hart. Shawn Michaels certainly did not screw Bret Hart. Nor did Vince McMahon screw Bret Hart. I truly believe that Bret Hart screwed Bret Hart. And he can look in the mirror and know that.
I'm sure in some parts of the country right now there's a collective groan that you're not accepting responsibility, that you orchestrated the situation, and the fact that people are not going to understand what you mean by Bret Hart screwed Bret Hart. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I will certainly take responsibility for any decision I've ever made. I've never had a problem doing that. Not that all of my decisions are accurate. They're not. But when I make a bad decision, I'm not above saying I'm sorry and trying to do the best about it that I can. Hopefully the batting average is pretty good. I make more good decisions than I do bad decisions. And as far as screwing Bret Hart is concerned, there's a time-honored tradition in the wrestling business that when someone is leaving, that they show the right amount of respect to the WWF superstars in this case, who helped make you that superstar. That you show the proper respect to the organization that helped you become who you are today. It's a time-honored tradition, and Bret Hart didn't want to honor that tradition. And that's something I would have never, ever expected from Bret, because he is known somewhat as a traditionalist in this business. It would have never crossed my mind that Bret would not have wanted to show the right amount of respect to the superstars who helped make him, and the organization who helped make him what he is today. Nonetheless, that was Bret's decision. Bret screwed Bret.
Some folks along the internet know that in 1996, Bret signed a 20-year contract with the WWF. Then I'm sure there are some at home now. Some folks are saying, well, how could Bret Hart be, he's got 18 years left on the contract. How can he leave? Did Bret Hart ask you to leave the WWF, or did you ask him to leave the WWF?
This was a joint decision, and it vacillated somewhat as well when we were making the decision. It was a joint decision from both Bret and me. And ultimately what happened was that the two of us got together and orchestrated the opportunity for Ted Turner's wrestling organization to, quote, steal Bret. I felt that for business reasons, if Bret Hart and the salary we were paying him was not justified. And Bret felt that for creative reasons, and in fact that he had become sort of second banana in his own mind to Shawn Michaels, who had, quote, stolen his spot. So for financial reasons on my part and creative reasons on Bret Hart's part, the two of us got together and decided, okay, let's do the very best we can for you, Bret. So the two of us orchestrated Bret Hart receiving a 3-year deal in which he is paid $3 million a year, which I believe is the richest deal in all of professional wrestling. And that's working 125 days a year. So I felt, from a personal standpoint, that if Bret wasn't a great investment any longer for the WWF, although I really didn't want him to go, but nonetheless, that the least I could do for Bret is to help him help himself. And I told Bret, if in fact you do get this deal from Turner, I'm going to be the very first person personally to congratulate you. And I was. From a business standpoint, I didn't really want to lose Bret. He wasn't paying off from a financial standpoint, but nonetheless, I really didn't want to lose Bret.
Certainly the bitterness of the loss at the Survivor Series could never be more prevalent. He stands in the ring and he spits in your face. Shortly thereafter, he is destroying WWF television equipment. Were you prepared for what happened after the match?
I was disappointed in Bret when he hit me. Very disappointed. I sustained a concussion as a result of it, with vision problems to this day. I'll get over it. And I didn't think it was the right thing to do. Bret seems to be crowing about that, that I've read, where, you know, he feels proud of striking me. And it wasn't a question of a confrontation, because even at 52 years old, I dare say that perhaps things would have been a little different if there were a confrontation. I allowed Bret to strike me. I had hoped that he wouldn't. I'd hoped that we could sit down and try and work things out as gentlemen. That's what I'd really hoped for, but that's not what happened.
Have you considered pressing charges or pursuing legal remedies for that situation in his locker room?
I have considered it. I think those options are still available. I'm not pursuing it at the moment. And I guess maybe it all depends on Bret as to whether or not I do.
If you were only a story writer, and the Survivor Series was the final chapter in the life story of Bret Hart, the WWF years, how would you have preferred to write the final chapter?
As a storyteller, I would have hoped that Bret's story would be a dramatic one. I would hope that Bret's story would be one that would give him dignity, that would give him the poise to state that I was maybe the greatest WWF superstar ever in terms of his departure. And one way of being able to give back to the company, being able to give back to those individuals, those superstars who helped you achieve the level of success that you have, when you know that you're leaving in a time-honored tradition, might have been, for argument's sake, that after the most grueling match that Bret ever had in his life, that Bret was pinned. But in that small moment of defeat, Bret would have stood straight up and shown the whole world what a true champion, both as a human being and a wrestling persona, he really is. And if I had been Bret, if I were writing the story, I can see Bret, after a 1, 2, 3, simply saying, okay, to his opponent, you got the best of me. I want to congratulate you. I want to stick my hand out and congratulate you. And furthermore, I want everyone in the whole locker room to watch my match so that I can show, for those who follow in my footsteps, the way in a time-honored tradition this is to be done. To show every individual, every secretary, everyone in Titan Sports, the World Wrestling Federation, who counts on me to do the right thing, that I was there, that I was a superstar, maybe the greatest of ever, and I went out the way a true champion would go out.
Are you able to step back and objectively look at this thing and evaluate your friend, your perhaps former friend, Bret Hart, the human being, and have sympathy for this man?
Sympathy? I have no sympathy for Bret whatsoever. None. I have no sympathy for someone who was supposed to be a wrestling traditionalist, not doing the right thing for the business that made him, not doing the right thing for the fans and the performers and the organization who helped make him what he is today. Bret made a very, very selfish decision. Bret's going to have to live with that for the rest of his life. Bret screwed Bret. I have no sympathy whatsoever for Bret.
So let's pause at 28:31.
Welcome back, ladies and
So we'll pause right there. I want to get your reaction from that. There's a lot to unpack there. Before we do, though, I think we can all agree a lot of this was around money. I mean, the only way Bret winds up getting out of that contract is when Vince comes to him in September and says, I can't afford your contract. See if you can get your deal back with Turner. And I wish we could rewind and go back to September of 97. And I would just be like, psst, hey, Vince, did you ever sign up for a subscription and forget about it? You're probably pissing your money away. Rocket Money can help you. And maybe we can save you enough money to keep the hitman around here. And here's the reality. We all do this. We all sign up for something. It's a free trial, or there's one show on this app we want to watch. And man, that has been my circumstance. I have had more than one of these pop up that surprised me. Both the wife and I signed up to watch television together for the same doggone thing. She was paying for it. I was paying for it. We're only using one account. Even a fight. I signed up for DAZN to buy a fight. I didn't need to keep paying that every month. I kind of forgot about it. Rocket Money found that and a whole lot more. And now I'm able to save that money each and every month. Let me explain. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions. They'll even monitor your spending and help you lower your bills all in one place. Here's how it works. With Rocket Money, you can easily cancel the subscriptions you don't want with just the press of a button. No more long hold times or annoying emails with customer service. You see, Rocket Money does all the work for you. By the way, did you know that Rocket Money can even negotiate to lower your bills for you? Yeah, up to 20%. All you got to do is take a picture of your bill and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Rocket Money also helps you monitor all your expenses in one place. Hey, they'll recommend custom budgets based on your past spending. And how about this? They'll even send you a notification when you've reached your spending limits. I'm glad my wife gets those notifications now. With over 5 million users and counting, Rocket Money has helped save its customers an average of $720 a year and $1 billion in total savings so far. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and manage your money the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/83weeks. That's rocketmoney.com/83weeks. rocketmoney.com/83weeks. So Eric, let's get back with the playback here. I'm at 28 minutes and 31 seconds. We see the Los Per Weekrods come into the ring. I'll track it just for a minute so you know we're listening, and then we'll lay out and talk about Vince McMahon. Here we go. 28:31 in 3, 2, 1, play.
gentlemen, to WWF Raw. Los Pericos on their way to the ring. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, in the War Zone later tonight, we will have part 2 of our very candid interview with Vince McMahon.
So part 2 still coming up. But is that the first time you sat down and watched that whole part 1?
Absolutely is.
What'd you think?
First of all, I agree with Vince. The unfortunate part of this whole story was that Vince was convinced that I was going to somehow convince Bret Hart to bring the belt over to WCW and drop the drop the WWF belt in the trash, just like I had done with Medusa.
I was going to say, where would he get such a crazy idea?
Yeah, no, I don't blame him for having that concern.
Yeah.
What Vince didn't know was, as a result of the lawsuit, the Scott Hall, Kevin Nash lawsuit, which was still ongoing at that point in time, there were so many limitations on what I could do and couldn't do with regard to WWF trademarks, copyrights, all that. So I was hogtied and handcuffed in terms of that. There was no way I could have done it, but Vince couldn't have known that.
Right.
Right. My reputation preceded me
sure.
at that point. It wasn't going to happen. When Bret and I talked about the situation going into Montreal, Bret was concerned that Vince was going to ask him to drop the belt in Montreal. And I said, well, Bret, it doesn't matter. You're Bret Hart.
Yes.
You're not Bret Hart with a WWF belt and some nobody without it. You're Bret freaking Hart.
Yes.
It doesn't matter at all to me. And I encouraged him to just do business. Not because I was as concerned about the time-honored tradition as Vince McMahon apparently was, because he mentioned that, I think, 4 times in that interview.
Yeah.
That wasn't it. It's just that it wasn't an issue for me. I knew, number one, I couldn't do anything with the belt, even if I wanted to. Legal wouldn't let me. Turner Legal would not let me. It was not and I knew that going in. It was not an issue. And in my heart, it just didn't matter whether he did the job or not. Bret, and here's where Bret screwed Bret. I don't even think it was about dropping the belt. It was dropping the belt in Montreal because Bret was convinced that he was a Canadian hero of such significant magnitude that it would have a devastating impact on who, I don't know, other than Bret, because Bret's vision of himself as the Canadian hero was going to be compromised if he did the job in Montreal, which I think is silly. And as I listened to that interview, and look, Vince can be as convincing as anybody I've ever met.
Yes.
He is amazing when he wants to be. And there was a little bit of an unusual charm in Vince McMahon in that sit down. But I agree with him. Bret should have done what Bret should have done in Montreal. And as JR asked, Vince, as a storyteller, how would you have presented it? I think listening to that for the very first time that's something that I would have been excited about seeing. And it would have been the right way for Bret, for his character and for his legions of Canadian fans. It would have been the right thing to do. It just wasn't the right thing to do for Bret's ego at that point in time. And that's what it was really all about. The other thing I noticed, Vince talking about the situation where Vince, offered him a 20-year contract and guaranteed him a lot of money, and then woke up one day and went, can't afford it because I'm getting my ass kicked by WCW and have been for the last year and a half. When he had to get out of the contract, he made it sound like we orchestrated. There was no orchestration. Vince told Bret that he couldn't afford him any longer. Bret called me and I did a deal. And the amount of money that I paid him had nothing to do with where WWE or WWF was at that time. I knew what my budget was. I knew what I was facing with the addition of another show in prime time on Turner. So I had 3 hours of Nitro on Monday, and now I had 2 hours coming my way on Thursday. I knew I needed somebody to be the face of that show, Thunder. And I was well within my budget to offer Bret what I offered him. It wasn't a stretch. Didn't have to ask anybody's permission. Didn't have to run it up the flagpole. It was an easy deal for me to make, which sounds crazy now at this point, but yeah.
You could see how a lot of people are going to be upset with what you just said about Bret, though, right?
I'm sorry, say that again. You broke up a little bit.
I'm just saying, if this was anybody else saying what you said about Bret, I think people would be more inclined to just sort of go along to get along. But when you say it, respectfully, people say, well, he had creative control. And if anybody knows
who had creative control,
Bret Hart.
Bret didn't have creative control.
Yes, he did.
Did he have meaningful consultation or did he have creative control?
It was said that he had creative control, and
that's wrong. It's wrong. I want to see that contract. There's only one person, and if I'm wrong, please, I beg somebody to show me that I'm wrong, because I don't want to repeat something that's wrong.
I can't believe you've never heard that before. That's what this issue has always been about, is that
it's bullshit. Well, Bret had creative control. Why is he bitching about all the creative that he went along with? What the fuck? It's either yin or yang, dude.
No, hang on. I'm talking about
come out and claim that you have creative control and then bitch about the creative.
He didn't bitch about the creative. He bitched about them doing the switcheroo. They agreed to a finish, and then that's not what they did.
Whoa. Okay, I'm off track. So Bret had creative control in WWE?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought, what the hell?
All right.
No, all right.
Okay, all right.
Well, he may have had it. I don't know.
He had it. He had it. And they changed the finish on him. And you're saying, oh, he should have went along. He should have did business.
He should have, though.
But hang on now, Eric. You gave creative control to Hulk Hogan, and he didn't always do what was best for business and what you told him to do. So how can you come on here and say Bret should have did it, but it's okay that Hogan didn't?
We're gonna dig something up that I hoped would have been buried a long time ago. Look, Hulk Hogan never made a decision. I'm going to set Starrcade aside for a minute because we're going to come back to that.
Yes, that's the one we're talking about.
That's what you're getting at.
Yes, I am.
So I'm going to set that off to the side. And everything else that Hulk Hogan did while he was in WCW, while he had creative control, was in the best interest of WCW, not in the best interest of Hulk Hogan. He never pulled the creative control card one time. From 1994 to 1997, I guess, he never pulled that card out of his wallet once. Not once. Never threatened it. Never reached in his back pocket like he was going to pull it. There was only one time that it became a real issue, and that was Starrcade. And you can have fun with the tan, no tan, all you want.
Yeah.
There was a reason why Hulk made that call. And there was a reason why I couldn't disagree with him. And I'm going to let it go at that. You can blame it on the tan because I did say that. He didn't look.
Oh, no. Listen.
Prepared. But we're talking about Sting. There was a reason that I couldn't argue with. That wasn't self-serving. I know the audience thinks of it that way because the audience is basically, they're watching in their homes. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They don't know the state of mind of certain individuals at certain points in time. They weren't there. I didn't like the decision. I tried everything I could to overcome the challenge, but I couldn't. But that was not selfish. It was not selfish on the part of Hulk Hogan. It was his best judgment, and he could have been wrong. And it did create a problem for WCW, for me. We're still talking about it today, for crying out loud. It was an issue. It was really bad for me because I had spent almost a year and a half building this arc and building it more. And each and every week, the intensity, the interest, the engagement within that arc for 18 solid months continued to grow. And to not be able to pay it off, it was devastating. But I understood why he made the call, Hulk. That was the only time. So I can be critical, I think. This was not a decision that Bret made for the betterment of WWE. It was a decision. In his own words, he told me it wasn't. He wanted to do it in Pennsylvania or somewhere out in New Jersey or something. He didn't want to do it in Montreal because he was a Canadian hero. Sorry.
I don't know, man. It feels like to me, it's kind of the same thing, what Bret did and what Hogan did. And I think there's even more evidence of that when you take a look at Bash at the Beach 2000. And I know that became a legal issue, but Hogan didn't like the creative that was done because it wasn't what he agreed on. And he took his ball and he went home. Feels like Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan have a whole lot in common.
Oh, dude, are you? Wait a minute. Are you talking about the bash at the beach where Hulk and I got in a limo and took off together?
Yep. And Hogan never came back.
That was part of a storyline.
But he never came back, bud.
That we agreed to, and we didn't come back. He didn't come back because Vince Russo went off script and went into business for himself.
Just like Vince McMahon did.
Although Vince Russo didn't have the right to do that. We had agreed.
Vince McMahon didn't have the right to do that.
Yes, he did have the right.
Bret Hart had creative control. He didn't have the right to do that.
We know that for sure.
We know that for sure.
Absolutely know that for sure.
We absolutely know that for sure. It's been well established for decades. Just saying, they got more in common than you would admit. By the way, we're watching a really fun episode of Monday Night Raw. We just saw Sonny out here looking as Roll Tide can get, acting as a special guest referee for a lot of little people. And then we had Kane come out and destroy all the little people and the headbangers. And now, before we go to a break, we're doing another tease with Vince McMahon sitting down with Jim Ross. And of course, we've got DX coming up next. Now take a look on the left. There you see full beard, Rick Rude. This is going to be fun. I can't believe this is the first time we've ever watched this together, but this is still the early days of the Kane character. As a reminder, he debuted in October. Here we are in November. I mean, he's only been here for a month and change at this point, debuting at In Your House Bad Blood in October and now laying waste. Of course, he started this year as Fake Diesel. So Glenn Jacobs is enjoying the best third act in the history of WWE. My God. Think about that storyline arc there. Evil Dentist, Fake Diesel, Kane.
That's not a storyline arc. That's just shifting gears, man.
I mean, what?
Well, that didn't work. Let's try that. Well, that didn't work. Let's try that. That's not a storyline. That's an AEW storyline, but that's not a storyline.
In the story of Glenn Jacobs' life, that's about the best third act anybody could have ever hoped for.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
He's
the mayor.
Yeah, he's the mayor of Knox County. So listen, we know Rick Rude's feelings on the Montreal screw job. I know that you guys didn't necessarily end things on the best possible terms before. I know he got the Lloyds of London thing, but I know he was kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. And you went out to the trunk with him to get the belt once, and there was the gun in the trunk and the whole deal.
Oh, that was long before that. That was before the Lloyd.
Years before. But the thing that really shocked me most about this appearance, I guess, because what we're going to see is something pretty cool. I mean, the same guy appearing on both shows at the same time, wearing different facial hair. Were you surprised that Vince McMahon was this lax about letting a guy on his TV without being under contract? I mean, we are like 2 years removed from the whole Lex Luger thing, and he's done it again.
That is weird because, I mean, WWE has always been buttoned up really, really tight.
Yes.
And it's not even so much about, well, we want to have this guy under contract before we put him on TV because, my God, we want to own him and control him and make money off him. All that. That's part of it. And that part of it surprises me as well. But there's also a legal exposure there. You know, you got somebody out there performing and he or she gets hurt on your show and there's no agreement that covers certain situations and potential legal considerations. You're kind of exposing yourself legally, as a company, to have somebody out there with absolutely no contract. That's bizarre. And even more so because it's WWE, because they had always from day one been buttoned up so tight. I find that pretty interesting.
It is. We see the classic DX entrance here with cutaways to girls dancing and the graphics. And of course, coming down the ramp, it's Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and Chyna, all introduced by Rick Rude sporting a beard. What do you think of this DX entrance? All the flashes and cutaways and.
It was too much.
Yeah.
I think, it's, what is that? You can watch certain things on television and go into kind of a weird mental state as a result of it. It's a form of torture actually. But, I think that
there's a form of torture that happens every Monday night. Sorry.
It's almost seizure inducing.
Yeah.
But I like the idea. I mean, I get the idea. It was probably David Sahadi's idea. Speaking of David Sahadi, do you know he's got a new book out?
He's got a great book out, and we should talk about it.
Let's talk about that book. My Dad, My Dying Son. It's available on Amazon. Check it out. David is a really creative guy. Enjoyed working with David for a long time in TNA. Just a fun guy to be around. Always up, always positive, always got something good to say. Even under pressure. He's a good dude. And he was so close to his dad. So very close to his dad.
And as much as David Sahadi is a wrestling television icon, his dad was a television icon before him. So their story is really, really special. And I've developed some friends in the television universe, and boy, they all speak about his dad with such high regard. So check it out. His book, David Sahadi's book, is available now on Amazon. Let's track a little bit of Shawn Michaels here.
Of his family. So there's only one thing really left for the Heartbreak Kid, the World Wrestling Federation champion, the European champion, to do, and that is start beating the hell out of Bret Hart's friends. And if that's you, Ken Shamrock, that is exactly what is gonna happen. Now, Triple H, I believe you have some words to say.
So this is their sort of NWO promo time, if you will. We also saw earlier the Los Boricuas. They were actually wrestling the New Age Outlaws, but before they're really the New Age Outlaws. Meanwhile, while that was happening, Perry Saturn was retaining the TV title against Scotty Riggs over on Nitro. During the video package of Ken Shamrock, we were sort of hyping him up as the next challenger for Shawn Michaels. Then we got that minis match with Sonny. And then the Big Kane introduction. We start hour 2, and now here we are with DX, Rick Rude kicking us off here. And now they're bringing down Sergeant Slaughter, and they're going to beat him up here, burying him under some toilet paper. They're going to make it out to look like an X. And Meltzer would say Rude was in the segment, which wasn't edited out. And in commentary, which was done live, you could tell they were kind of joking about it. As Cornette said, Rude was the typical insurance salesman. When it comes time to collect on the policy, he's gone to Tahiti. Of course, that phrase is because Shawn has consistently been referring to Rick Rude as his insurance policy. You got to think, though, that Jim Ross, who was head of talent relations at the time, and certainly Vince McMahon, were freaking out when this happened. But again, as we pointed out, it's not the first time it happened. It happened with Lex Luger, happened again with Medusa, and now it's happening here with Rick Rude, and it would even happen again with Jeff Jarrett. I like that you were always, sort of punching up at the WWF and looking for these opportunities.
It was effective until it wasn't. until I asked Tony Schiavone to make fun of Rock and Mankind, and everybody switched over to watch that, and the rest is history. Which, by the way, Mick will tell you every single time if you bring it up. He loves telling that story. He loves telling it to me every time I see him. Somewhere in the conversation, lightheartedly as it may be, bam, takes another shot. Well-deserved, though. Well-deserved.
Meanwhile, while we're watching this over on Nitro, the Steiners and Ted DiBiase are getting jumped by the NWO. Kurt Henning's defending his U.S. title against Lex Luger. And, yeah, I mean, it's a fun back and forth show where we've already seen Rick Rude without the facial hair. Pretty fun. Hey, you know what? We got a fun question from Adam Arpin here. Other than helping sabotage a boat, why didn't WCW utilize little people more? Miniature Nasty Boys could have been fun. Of course, we did see Mini Vader, Mini Mankind, and all of the different mini luchadors that we saw earlier, but we never really saw any little person wrestling in WCW. Why was that?
I just didn't like it.
Well, how did you do micro championship wrestling after if you didn't like it? What the fuck?
That was a little different because they were all dwarfs, little people.
Yeah.
That didn't strike me as, I don't know. I don't even know how to say this. I thought it was before I got into professional wrestling, when I was a fan, just like everybody else, as I am today, it was always, whenever I would see little people wrestling, it more often than not was comical. To me, it was demeaning. Just as a fan, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it when I was a little kid. I didn't enjoy it when I was a young teenager. I didn't enjoy it as I, still was watching wrestling into adulthood. I just always felt that it was the way it was done was demeaning. That was one reason, probably the biggest, by the way. The second reason is there just wasn't a large enough pool of little people that knew how to wrestle that would allow you to put forth anything that was not just a comical sideshow one-off. We're going to create a division. We're going to have a tournament.
I would have loved for you guys to have had a division, and you had like just your main characters. Like imagine like a mini La Parka wrestling a mini Dusty Rhodes. That'd have been badass.
And it could have been if there was a large enough pool and you could, get creative and not just constantly presented in a, what I consider to be a demeaning way. I didn't like it.
Well, we love this.
Here's what I don't get, Conrad. I am still hung up on the fact that Vince McMahon gave Bret creative control.
Dude, he started.
That to me is the biggest piece of news I've received in forever. I just can't imagine it. I cannot imagine Vince McMahon.
Well, I mean, he says he gave it to him on paper, but in reality, in execution, he didn't really give it to him.
Yeah, but giving someone creative control on paper is now you got a legal issue on your hands. Why didn't Bret sue?
Aha! Now that is the question that's got everybody all these years later saying it was a work. Now, I'm not saying it was a work, but that is what a lot of people point to because they say, well, Bret was the biggest star, got the richest contract in wrestling at the time. So he totally leveled up his financial position. And this launched and created the Mr. McMahon character, which would help the WWE really level up and go into the damn stratosphere. And eventually, Vince was able to take the company public largely because of the success of his feud with Stone Cold on camera. Would all of that happen the way it did without the Montreal Screwjob? A lot of people say no. And they think, okay, well, if Bret is much better off on the other side of this and Vince is much better off on the side of this, and there wasn't this big resolution to that. And then eventually, what do you know? He did come back and become friendly with the WWE and go in the Hall of Fame, et cetera, et cetera. Perhaps it was a work. Now, of course, those are conspiracy theorists because everyone who was there says absolutely no way, no how. But it is one of those things that makes you go,
But to me, not to keep harping on this, because I know we got other stuff to cover here, but to me, that says that Bret's claim for creative control might not have been absolute. Might not have been. There might have been language within that contract that provided some assurance of creative participation. But if there's language in that contract that ultimately gives Vince total creative control, I just don't believe it. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that Vince McMahon has ever given anybody creative control. I know that he's had, he had his issues with Steve Austin when Steve Austin didn't like creative and he took his shit, packed his bag and went home. Right? I know that it happens when you're dealing with top talent. In the brief period of time that I was there in 2019, I saw the kind of emotional gymnastics that took place every Monday and Friday when talent didn't like the creative. And you had people camped outside Vince McMahon's door for hours in line waiting to get in to plead their case. And lo and behold, stuff changed. That's part of the business. Any top person is going to have the ability to sit down with who's ever in charge of creative, whether it was Vince McMahon or Eric Bischoff or Tony Khan or now Paul Levesque or Bruce Pritchard or anybody else in that process, and sit down and go, hey, you know what? This doesn't feel right for me. Can we revisit some of this? It happens. It's a negotiation more often than not. And the higher up you are in the talent food chain, the more intense and consistent and often those conversations take place. But I cannot buy that Vince gave Bret total control, because when I picked Bret up from the airport, or when he first showed up, he was freaking livid. And if Bret would have had the ability to sue, because he was so bitter, some of the stuff he said about the entire McMahon family, I'm not going to repeat because I know he didn't mean it at the time, but in his mindset at that point in time, for a long time, months probably, it ate him alive. If you have total creative control and you've been abused that badly in Bret's mind, how do you not pull that trigger? It's not because you can't afford it. You got $3 million a year coming in. You can afford a lawsuit. There's something still fishy, and I'm not buying the work I lean into. He may have thought he had creative control and went home and got his lawyer, and his lawyer went, well, it's not really creative control. It's creative input. That's my take.
I got to think he doesn't sue him because he goes out on TV. I mean, while the cameras are still rolling and there's fans in the arena, and destroys all the television equipment, spits in the eye of Vince McMahon, and then punches him in real life. It feels like, all right, well, if you're going to sue me for this, then I'm going to sue you for that.
You know what? I'll buy that. That's believable, because, and especially listening to Vince, going back to that interview we just saw, when JR asked him,
yeah,
you're going to pursue legal. And Vince said, that's up to Bret.
Yes.
So that I'll buy, which would support your position that he had creative control. Now you're at a standoff. Well, I'll go sue him for creative control, and he's going to sue me for assault and battery. Oh, and he got a concussion. Oh my God, that could be damages down the road. Yikes. I get it. Oh, cool.
Because here's the thing, in the end, he got to leave a company where he was positioned as the second biggest babyface. I mean, he's the world champ, but not the main event. That's where they had him. And now he's going to get to, in theory, in his mind, go be involved with the bigger, hotter company, make more money than he's ever made in his life. And I'm sure he's thinking at the time, main event, Halloween Havoc or Starrcade or something like that for the title with Hulk Hogan, the match that had eluded him at that point for 4 years.
Could be.
We're watching a match that maybe exemplifies why the WWF was losing the Monday Night Wars. We got Eric Shelley here. I know what you're thinking to yourself. Who? Wrestling Scott Taylor, who's going to go on to eventually be Scotty Too Hottie. This is all part of a tournament to crown the new light heavyweight champion. And you can see the fans are not engaged. They have not spent any time developing these characters to the audience. So they're having a fine match, but they want to see stars. They want to see spectacle. That's not really what we're seeing here with referee Jimmy Corderas calling the action. We did a phone call. Jeff Jarrett called into the program during the course of this, and he was maybe, third generation promoter, the only one with any sense, where he said, hey, why are we promoting Bret Hart on WWF TV? Isn't he out of the company? Thought that was a little logic. That was nice here. Meltzer would recap this whole Why Bret Why episode by saying, so the battle lines were drawn for the next Monday night ratings war. The WWF had been promoting Why Bret Why, a candid interview with Vince McMahon, plus promising McMahon would discuss the situation further after the show on AOL. McMahon's interview did strong quarter-hour ratings, although the end was the typical Nitro win. McMahon's first interview segment went head-to-head with Guerrero and Malenko on the WCW side of things, holding a 3.5 to a 3.4 edge. His second interview went unopposed and drew a 3.5 rating. So Scott Taylor is victorious here, but the interviews are doing a 3.4 and a 3.5, but really neck and neck with Nitro at the time. So people are interested, and we're going to talk about how Bruce felt about the promo. But first, I think we're going to see Mark Mero call out Butterbean here. This is Mark Mero's second appearance on the show. And by Mark Mero's second appearance, I mean Sable's second appearance. Sable is wearing glasses because they're explaining that she's been kicked by a horse. And you saw earlier when the glasses came off that she had a black eye. We also saw Miro yelling at her. So even though we're not out and out saying it, we are certainly implying that Miro is an abusive husband here. I don't know.
I was going to say, I've seen people get kicked in the head by horses, and a black eye is the least of their concern.
Yes. Yeah, she would not be on TV if she had been kicked in the head by a horse.
No. Not at all the time.
Butterbean has a pay-per-view on December 6th on the Oscar De La Hoya boxing card. And I guess maybe we're trying to cross-promote some of that. And we've got Mark Miro here calling out Butterbean. Thankfully, that didn't happen. We should also talk about the way this interview with Vince was received. Bruce Pritchard has said, you know, as far as why did Vince even do this? Because I think that's often been the thing is number one doesn't acknowledge number two. At this point, WWE's number two, WCW's number one. But it's still very much a dogfight. There's lots of inside digs back and forth. And why would you spend time talking about someone who's not here? Bruce said this: there was so much backlash from a certain segment of the audience and audience members that probably wouldn't normally speak up were speaking up about this. And it was a peek behind the curtain of the business. Vince felt it was important to address it and to address the television audience and talk about, hey guys, this is what happened. And come out for the first time as his mind as the owner of the WWE, and that he made the decision to kind of put the heat where he thought it should be. And Bruce says that Vince believed he was not doing a heel promo. He felt like it was a babyface promo. Quote, I know Vince felt this was a babyface promo 100%. 100% Vince looked at it as a babyface promo on his part, because he was explaining to the audience, I did this for you. I did this for all the superstars of the WWE. And I did this for you, the audience who supported us. Bret didn't want to do the time-honored tradition and do what was right. So in Vince's mind, he's telling the audience, hey guys, in order to continue to bring you the entertainment we do every week, this is why I had to do what I had to do. But Bret made me do it. What do you think about Bruce's comments there about defending the way Vince felt about this?
I thought it was a babyface interview because he told the truth.
Wow.
I mean, that's what babyfaces do. They tell the truth. Heels lie. Babyfaces tell the truth. What Vince said was true. What part wasn't? I know for a fact, Bret told me he didn't want to do the job in Montreal.
Yeah.
Well, what did Vince say that was a lie? He didn't.
Well, we've got part 2 coming up here, and we're going to be taking a time out here shortly. I think we should probably go ahead and start counting down now. It's 102.35. I'm going to stop it at 102.40. All right, we'll pause right there. We see Butterbean getting out of the ring, and we're going to listen to part 2 of Bret Screwed Bret. But before we do, I want to tell you about our friends at Henson Shaving. This is the best razor I've ever owned. We're all familiar with this deal we make in life that if things are better, they cost more money. That's usually the case, but this is the exception to the rule. Not only is Henson better than what you've been using, but it's also more affordable, and it wasn't even their original plan. You see, this is an aerospace parts manufacturer that's made parts for the International Space Station and the Mars rover, and now they're bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. You see, razor blades are like diving boards. The longer the board, the more the wobble, well, the more likely you are to get nicks and cuts and scrapes. What they've decided to do is use their CNC machines that are aerospace grade to cut metal razors that are thinner than you've ever seen. How thin? About 0.0013 inches, which is less than the thickness of a human hair. That means a more secure and stable blade that gives you a vibration-free shave. The razor also has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream, and that makes clogging virtually impossible. You see, what the folks at Henson Shaving decided to do was make the best razor, not the best razor business. The best razor business might have some planned obsolescence and proprietary blades, and maybe it'll be made out of plastic, so it's going to be flimsy and break, and then they'll hoodwink you and sign you up for a subscription. That's not what Henson does. You see, Henson looks and feels like an old school razor, one like your handsome ass grandfather used to use, but it works with a standard dual edged blade like Ric Flair and every other wrestler are very familiar with. But this offers you the thinnest razor yet. That's why you need Henson. Henson has razors thinner than a human hair. And by the way, when you make the switch, it's only $3 to $5. $3 to $5 a year to replace those blades. Normally when you run down to the drugstore and you're picking up some blades, they keep it under lock and key. You're done with that routine. Now you can get a whole year supply for $3 to $5. So let's say no to subscriptions. Let's say yes to a razor that will last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/Eric to pick the razor for you and use the code ERIC, and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just be sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades at hensonshaving.com/Eric. Be sure to use our promo code ERIC. So Eric, I'm at 102.40. We're seeing Butterbean jump out of the ring here. I think Gorilla is about to follow him out. We're 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 40 seconds. Here we go in 3, 2, 1, play.
Well, women will do that to you, and I think that's what Mara's whole problem is. Still wrapped up in his woman, not paying attention to his career. But ladies and gentlemen, up next in part 2 of Why, Bret, Why? JR didn't lob any softballs, but this question could be the toughest of all that was asked.
If you had the opportunity to speak with Bret, what would you say to him now?
Dude, they did such a great job. That's 3 commercials they've taken where they tease it right before the commercial. They've built this up. It clearly worked. 3.5 in the ratings is pretty doggone strong. Then, now, forever. Here we go. Let's track part 2 here of Why, Bret, Why.
Now, this is a crazy question. Would you welcome Bret Hart back if he just said, you know, Vince, I've changed my mind. Can I come back? Would you allow him to return to the WWF? I mean, he spit in your face, notwithstanding destroying television monitors and equipment, certainly notwithstanding the fact that he punched you. Mm-hmm. Would you allow him to ever come back to the WWF if that was an option?
This is a strange business, and yes, I would. We would have to have a real frank understanding. I would want to hear Bret say, Vince, I'm sorry. You know, I didn't mean to be selfish. I just kind of lost it there for a while. And I have no problem saying, Bret, geez, I'm sorry that I had to do what I had to do as well. Would I welcome him back? I also would tell Bret no more free shots. I'd want that from strictly from a man's standpoint. I'd want him to know that. Okay, and that in the future, if we're going to have problems along those lines in a locker room or anywhere else, that, okay, we're going to have them, but no more free shots. Yeah, if Bret could tear up his contract with the other guys right now and return, I'd welcome Bret back under those conditions.
Was his motivation, do you believe his motivation then primarily, he says he didn't leave here for the money.
There were signs in the arena following Survivor Series. Bret sold out. Bret seems to be sensitive to that subject, that he doesn't want to be known as someone who sold out. I'm proud of the fact that I helped Bret sell out. And that's what Bret did. He sold out. And it's not a big deal because I helped him do it. So do I think that Bret left for the money? I think that when you're making $3 million a year and you're working 125 days of that year, I think Bret sold out, and I don't blame him for selling out. I helped him sell out. As a matter of fact, you know, I would suggest there could be a long line outside the next locker room with wrestlers begging me, Vince, help me sell out. So do I think he sold out? Yeah, and I don't think that, you know, every time Bret says, no, I didn't do it for the money, I think that Bret loses credibility every time he says that.
Did this whole ugly ordeal with Bret Hart affect you more professionally, the businessman side of Vince McMahon, or the personal side of Vince McMahon?
From a business side, the WWF will go on beyond Bret Hart. From a personal side, it definitely has affected me. I think that Bret and I, you can't end a 14-year relationship like was ended without having feelings. I regret that I felt that I was forced into making the decision that I made. I regret that Bret didn't do the right thing for the business and for himself, because it wouldn't have cost him $1 less with his deal with Turner. I regret that his fans, if there is such a thing separate from WWF fans, are in any way hurt by any of this. I regret that his family is having to endure this tirade that Bret seems to be on. I regret that a member of my family, my son, had to witness some of this, especially in the locker room. I regret all of that from a personal standpoint, yet steadfast remain that I made a tough decision, but it was the right decision for the WWF fans and the WWF superstars that remain here loyal to us.
If you had the opportunity to speak with Bret, and now's not a bad opportunity, because you know he's watching. Everybody involved in this situation is watching this right now.
Except for me.
What would you say to him now?
Probably what I said to him in the locker room. And that is that he made a mistake that I believe he'll regret from a professional standpoint. It didn't have to be made that way. I felt I had to do what I had to do for my company and our fans and our superstars that remain here. And I'm unwavering in that point of view. And perhaps Bret is unwavering in his point of view. I don't know that we'll ever get together. I hope we will one day. It's too bad that a 14-year relationship was destroyed because one member of that relationship forgot that we're in the sports entertainment business. Forgot where he came from.
When will you be over this?
I'm over it now. At the same time, Bret has been such a part of the WWF. Bret will always, a part of Bret will always be here in the World Wrestling Federation. And I'm going to remember the good times. I'm going to remember all the things that we did with Bret, in which he performed to the greatest degree possible and told those wonderful stories. I'm going to remember Bret as the excellence of execution. It's just too damn bad that in the end, Bret really wasn't the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. And he had that opportunity to live up to that in his final match with the WWF, and he failed.
Well, what do you think?
Wow, Eric? that was heavy, right?
I mean, you said it was a babyface promo. How do you feel now?
Yeah, even more so. He told the truth. I sense no bullshit in that. None whatsoever. You know what even surprises me more in listening to this? Because I forgot that Shane was in the room when Bret punched Vince. I am surprised that Shane didn't take Bret apart, because Shane's a hothead.
Yeah.
He likes to fight.
Yeah.
I'm impressed that he was able to maintain composure, because that would have been ugly for Bret.
It's a burial. I mean, he was doing his best to assassinate the character of Bret Hart.
But he did so. Don't you think he told the truth? Is it a burial? Really?
He doesn't work here. What's the upside?
How do you not address it?
Well, I'm just,
how do you pretend it didn't happen?
If you've been watching wrestling in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of things that weren't addressed and we pretended didn't happen.
Yeah, but not of that significance. One was, I disagree. You know, changing a finish in the middle of a match in a pay-per-view, that's not very commonplace in the last couple of years or at any other time.
Oh no, I'm not saying that the double cross was the issue. I'm just saying, normally when you dedicate this much TV time to something, Eric, you're going to pay it all. You're building to something. Did what we just saw, this McMahon promo, did it sell any tickets? Did it sell any pay-per-views? Did it sell any merch? I mean, what did it do? How did it advance our financial future within the business? Where's the money in what we just saw?
I think it put a tourniquet on what would have otherwise been a sizable bleed in terms of fan loyalty. Fans have to understand. It's not like it was a secret. If it would have happened in the ring and nobody would have known, if all the circus that took place after the fact and Bret throwing shit around, spitting on Vince, if all of that wouldn't have happened and you would have just been able to go back in the locker room and argue about it and fight about it and not been in front of the audience, I'd be with you on that. But given the way it played out on television, I don't know how you just not address it and hear the other side of the story without losing credibility with your audience.
I think it was just a ratings ploy. It was a short-sighted thing. And little did they know that they just backed into creating some heat for this Mr. McMahon character. By the way, we're watching a pretty fun segment here. Vader is supposed to be wrestling Goldust, but Goldust is showing up wearing pantyhose, saying he's injured. He's not going to be able to wrestle. And he's got a doctor's note. But I think Goldust is about to hit Vader in the head with a hammer.
What is with it? If you're not watching with us on YouTube, we're looking at.
He just hit him in the head with a hammer.
Dustin's got his face painted like a
chessboard. Yeah.
With some red horns on his eyes. And
he's going through different experiments with the character. But Vader just got hit in the head with a hammer. And that makes me want to take our last and one of our final timeouts. I'm going to stop it down at 1:14:55. And if you would like to hit somebody in your head with a hammer, I recommend that you take a Blue Chew first and use your old flesh hammer, boys and girls. You're going to get the same active ingredients from BlueChew.com that you get from Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Take these dudes anytime, day or night. So you can plan ahead when, you know, it's a anniversary sort of deal, or just be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Now the process is simple. You'll sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. The Blue Chew tablets are made right here in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. And boy, does it work. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you checked it out. Why not try it? Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. So discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it, y'all. And we got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free. When you use our promo code, just be sure to use the code 83weeks at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is 83weeks and you'll receive your very first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. And here we go. We're going to get back into the action here. We see Jerry Briscoe standing over Vader. We're on season 5, episode 44, November 17th, 1997. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1, play.
Vader needs medical attention. But up next, it'll be Rocky Maivia against Dude Love.
So check that out. This is before they're The Rock. This is before, you know, they're battling for the world title. At this point, The Rock, Rocky Maivia, has ran off with Stone Cold Steve Austin's Intercontinental Championship. Dude Love has been Mankind since April of 96, but over the summer of 97, we see that sit-down interview with with Jim Ross. He actually attacks Jim Ross at the end of it, but somehow is a babyface because we learned about this Dude Love character. And, so we've got this lovable, likable version of Mick Foley, who's going to be here before he is the WWF champ, taking on what is going to be one of the biggest Hollywood stars of all time back when he was Rocky Maivia, but just finding his voice as a heel performer. Sergeant Slaughter is our on-air commissioner here, much like Jack Tunney once before him. What do you think of Sarge in, I guess, what you would call your JJ role?
Not Sarge's forte.
Yeah.
He was such a great character in so many ways, but this didn't really click for Sarge, I don't think, to be honest. And I like Sarge a lot. You know, Sarge was one of the first guys, the first time Vern Gagne put me out in front of a camera to try to do an interview, and I just completely made a fool of myself. And much to the humor of everybody standing there watching me, Sarge was one of the guys, along with Brad Rheingans, who volunteered to stay after everybody else was done and help me learn how to do promos. So I've got a warm spot in my heart for Sarge, but this just isn't his best role.
He's announcing right now, he's going to be wrestling Triple H at the pay-per-view. It gets a pop. And what's interesting is, as we're looking at him right here, just 6 years prior to this, he was main eventing WrestleMania against Hulk Hogan. That feels like a lifetime prior to this. Wrestling has changed so much from 91 to 97. Meanwhile, over on the other channel, the main event of Nitro is the Giant taking on Scott Hall with Kevin Nash on commentary. Of course, the NWO comes out at the finish, and we're building towards World War III. This pay-per-view, of course, is next for you guys, World War III. Meanwhile, they're building for their December In Your House show. Dude Love's going to wrestle Rocky Maivia here. They're going to go about 9.5 minutes. When the ratings come in, Raw does a 3.15 rating and a 4.89 share. The first hour did 2.95. The second hour did 3.17. Meanwhile, Nitro, my apologies, I said it was 3 hours. It is not. It does 4.11. You got a 4.33 first hour and a 3.94 second hour, a 6.18 share. So when it's all said and done, it's a 4.11 to a 3.15. You guys are winning. Of course, this show that we're watching was taped in Cornwall, Ontario. There's a sellout, but it's a smaller building. 3,754 fans paying $46,000. It was taped on the 11th. We're watching it on the 17th. Of course, what is actually happening on the 17th is Rick Rude is hanging out in Cincinnati in front of a sellout, 13,877 fans who paid an all-time city record of $222,450 at the gate, plus another nearly 95,000 in merchandise. So Rick Rude could have been wrestling here in Canada, or I guess he was here in Canada in front of 4,000 fans. And 6 days later, almost 14,000 fans in Cincinnati. It's an interesting show for a lot of reasons. We got a ton of questions about this. Adam Leeson wants to know, does Eric remember at the time if he thought the screw job would help or hinder WWE?
I don't think I had an opinion about it in that regard. I mean, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it had happened, but I didn't really think about whether it was a good thing or a bad thing for the company.
Maivia's cutting a promo. Let's track it.
That this match I'm about to have is a non-title match.
Oh, give me a break. You're not even the champion.
And you know, The Rock is a lot of things, but a thief isn't one of them. Because you see, when The Rock was Intercontinental Champion, all of you people made it perfectly clear that I was the best damn Intercontinental Champion there was.
Has he got an identity crisis? Who's The Rock? He's talking about himself, right?
I'm a world-class athlete, a highly intelligent man, and I'm just better than the rest. That's all.
Well, Stone Cold Steve Austin has not left the arena, Rock.
You people wanted The Rock. Well, The Rock has answered your call. Thank you very much.
Man, you can tell he is finding his footing. He's so much more relaxed than he was. Go ahead.
That is so fun, seeing that early, what became such an iconic personality in this industry. But you're seeing he's just getting a feel for it. That's fun.
Michael says it's been discussed many times over Eric and Bret, but I'm curious about Eric's thoughts about Owen Hart in late 97. How would Eric have used Owen had he jumped to WCW?
Oh, it's, Michael, that's a hypothetical and something that I never gave any consider to when it was a possibility, and certainly nothing I ever gave I gave any thought to after, what happened to Owen. So I really don't know how to answer that. Timing would have probably dictated much of it, but just not something I ever gave any thought to. I'm sorry, I couldn't answer that any better for you.
Bit of a butterfly type effect question here from Mitchell. Eric, knowing that the Montreal Screwjob is what created the Mr. McMahon character, which helped propel the WWF to its amazing run, and knowing how poorly Bret Hart's WCW run went, given the chance at a redo, would you go back and not sign Bret to avoid the Montreal Screwjob?
It's an interesting way of looking at it. First of all, I'm not completely signed off on the fact that the Montreal Screwjob created the Vince McMahon character. And when I say that, let me also caveat that with a question. When did the Tyson Austin McMahon story begin?
January.
Following this?
Yeah, 2 months later.
Okay. All right. I just don't subscribe to the theory that Montreal Screwjob created Mr. McMahon. I think the idea was for Mr. McMahon to become a character long before the Montreal Screwjob. Montreal Screwjob certainly played into it, but to me, what made Mr. McMahon wasn't the Montreal Screwjob as much as it was Tyson, Austin, McMahon. That to me was the catalyst for what became that character.
I think, Eric, the reason people zero in on that is the Montreal Screwjob is really the first time it was like sort of officially, if you will, acknowledged Vince is the boss. Vince is the owner.
And maybe it was all coincidence, or maybe it was all a work, but
wait, you're not one of those people, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm just placating those who think that it's a possibility, because none of us will ever know. The only two people that know 1,000% is Vince McMahon and Bret Hart. So it's one of those things I guess we'll never know. I know what I believe.
Right.
And what I believe is it was a situation that could have been avoided. It happened. Vince McMahon did what he had to do. As a result, he had to come out and acknowledge the fact that he was the owner of the company. He had never done that, I don't think, in such a visible public way before. But I just don't think it was the catalyst for the Mr. McMahon character. I think it was coincidental more than anything.
Andy Goldsmith wants to know, I've always wondered, what would Eric have done in Vince's position?
I don't know if I would have done what Vince did. And to be honest about it, at that time, this was what, 97? So I was 42 and had been in management for a couple of years at that level. I don't know if I would have had the balls to do it, to be honest. I think I would have looked for some other alternative, because it's just, that was a big move. in all honesty, I don't know that I could have gone there. I would have tried to come up with something else, but I wouldn't have done that.
Adam has a great question. Vince shows up on Raw with a huge shiner here, but had you been in Vince's shoes and Bret took a swing at you following the screw job, how would you have reacted? Would you have let Bret get a free shot on you like Vince did? Would you have swung back and tried to take him down? Or would you just have had security remove him from the building and maybe press charges?
I don't know. It's just so much depends on the intent. You know, I've always been under the impression, and certainly I wasn't there, and I've talked to a few people, including Rick Rude, who was, and others subsequent to that. I think Vince went in there knowing he was going to get hit.
Yeah.
I think he gave it to him. I don't think Vince went in there pissed off, even though Bret spit in his face and did a bunch of stuff. I don't think that was his intent going in there. And I'm not sure it wasn't his intent to go ahead and let Bret have a free one. If I get punched in the face and I think somebody's actually wanting to hurt me, I am going to fight back. But I don't know in this situation if that's where Vince's head was at. You know, you react differently to things. It's like when Ric Flair busted into my dressing room and started firing shots at me. I thought there was a camera somewhere because he was throwing working punches, and he was kind of connecting.
Right.
But he threw 3 punches, and by the 3rd punch, he was bleeding, and I wasn't sure if this was a skit. He was throwing working. It had been so long since he threw a real punch. I don't think muscle memory allowed him to know how to throw a real punch. So I didn't really get hit. So I was in a state of confusion as opposed to somebody really hauling off and popping you in the chops. That gets a different reaction. I'm sure it would have gotten a different reaction for Vince unless he walked in there knowing there's a good chance Bret's going to take a shot and making the decision beforehand that he's going to let him have it.
So the Nation of Domination interfere. It's going to be a DQ, a schmoz, if you will. And all of a sudden, they've got Mick Foley with his arms pinned behind his back. Rock picks up Austin's Intercontinental title belt, getting ready to clock him in the face, and Austin slides in and makes the save. So we're going off the air here with a hot angle with The Rock and Stone Cold, all about the Intercontinental title. A little foreshadowing of what would happen in the future, but with the world title. A couple more questions, then I want to touch on some modern stuff, and we'll get out of here. RCS 88 wants to know, if Pillman was alive, do you think he would have gone back to WCW in protest and joined perhaps the NWO? Pillman coming back, that's an interesting idea.
I think there would have been a possibility, at least.
We saw Davey Boy, we saw Neidhart.
I'm sorry.
We saw Davey Boy. We saw Neidhart. The only 2 left were Owen and Pillman.
Yeah.
That could have been interesting.
I could have seen it.
Yeah.
Brian and we weren't on bad terms at all when he left WCW at all. We had several conversations while he was in WWE, and they were very amicable. So it's certainly a possibility.
Peter wants to know, what was the point in bringing in Roode if he wasn't able to wrestle?
Kind of an enforcer role. Roode was very good on the mic, by the way,
yep.
For those that forget or didn't know because you weren't really watching back then. But Rick was really good on the mic, and he was a threat. I mean, the way Rick carried himself and based on the career that he had, he was a potential threat that could really work a mic, and he looked like he was right out of Central Casting. So he had a lot of value in that regard.
I want to remind everybody that about a year prior to this, over on Nitro, you turned heel and revealed that you were actually part of the NWO as you guys were setting up Piper and Hogan for Starrcade 96. Here we are a full 12 months later, and we see Vince McMahon maybe tiptoeing down as the heel authority figure, if you will. Another thing maybe you don't get credit for. Just want to throw that out there.
D-Generation X.
Yes.
I mean, come on, unless you're
not
Dave
paying
Meltzer,
attention. Yeah.
Or just not really observant, you have to know And you know what's funny? It was what predicated this. I think sometime in November 1997 is Vince McMahon coming out and saying, "Hey, we're going to change the way we do things.
Yes,
we're not going to insult the intelligence of our audience any longer. Reality-based storyline. It's all shit that I've been doing and kicking his ass with for over a year by that point. So it's interesting that Vince finally threw in his chips and said, "Okay, I'm going to do what Eric's doing over there," and it worked. He did it better and bigger and louder and crazier.
I want to talk about Tony Khan, Bully Ray, Evan Courageous, Ric Flair, Murdoch and Fox and WWE. But before we do that, and we'll put a button on this episode, I wanted to let you have an opportunity to talk about how you've been eating good lately with our friends over at Riverbend Ranch.
Yeah, thank you for that. And do you know, Conrad, I mean, you've eaten fine restaurants, traveled all over the place, you enjoy a great meal. But do you know why when you go into one of the top restaurants anywhere in this country and you see aged prime steak, do you know why aged meat tastes so much better than meat that is not aged?
I don't.
Not many people do. And back when I worked for a food processor, no, I wasn't selling meat out of the trunk of a car, but I did work for a food processor. And I learned all about aged meat back in the late 70s, early 80s, because the processor that I worked for was a commercial food processing organization. They had their own processing plant, obviously, but they also had a room where they aged their beef for 28 days. It was their methodology. And I had to learn why aged meat is so much better. And what happens, it's kind of originally it was a way of preserving meat before refrigerators became a thing. You'd find an area that had the right temperature and the right humidity, and you hang that meat there and you let it age for a period of 21 to 30 days, depending on how you do it. And what happens is the enzymes in the meat start to break down. And when the enzymes start to break down, the meat fibers start to loosen up and become tender. The flavor profile changes with aged beef. It has a much more savory, it's just a different flavor. And that's why if you go into any of the most expensive steakhouses anywhere in America, you're going to find that your meat has been aged for a period of 21 to 30 days under a specific humidity and temperature, because it makes all the difference in the world in the quality, the taste, the texture of said meat product. And Riverbend Ranch, they not only age their beef, and the reason it's so expensive and you only get it at super high dollar restaurants is because 99% of the meat that you're going to buy at retail comes through one of a couple big major processing plants, big box processing plants, and they churn and burn. They get that meat in the door and out the door and onto a truck as quickly as they can. It's a meat factory. Aging, taking that inventory out of the pipeline and letting it age for 30 days is very, very expensive, and very few of the big commercial processing plants have the facilities to do it. At Riverbend Ranch, they not only process their own beef to none in terms of what I've had access to, including some of the finer restaurants that I've eaten at anywhere in the country. No hormones ever. No antibiotics ever. I know right where this meat comes from, where it's grown, how it's grown, what it's fed, who processes it, the fact that it's aged and it's shipped right to my door. And the best part is, if you compare it to any of the other box meat delivery companies out there, you're going to save money. You've just got to try it. Go to getriverbend.com and find out how you can get some of the best quality meat you're going to find anywhere, and I mean anywhere, delivered to your door. Forget all the supply chain issues. Forget about showing up at the supermarket on the weekend, getting ready to grill some steaks for your friends, or coming over to watch football and finding out that it's all been picked over. And who cares, because you don't know where it comes from. It hasn't been aged. You don't know anything about that product. Get riverbendranch.com, and you're going to find out just how great meat can be.
So let's talk about some current events. Then we'll put a button on this extra jumbo episode of 83 weeks. There's been so much flying through the headlines. I feel like we should cover as much of it as we can. We saw Tony Khan tease a big announcement, and the big announcement was tickets are on sale for All In next year at Wembley Stadium. A lot of people have been critical of this approach. Tony Khan has a big announcement. It feels like that we have seen more of those happening, but this is the follow-up act to the biggest event in wrestling history. I get why it deserves, a platform, but even I can admit, maybe I wouldn't have said we've got a big announcement. What'd you think?
It was a misfire. That's all. I mean, I get it. He's proud of it. He should be.
Yeah.
Quite an accomplishment. There's no question about that. I think AEW feels, I don't want to try to be inside of the mind of Tony Khan or anybody else for that matter, but I would imagine if I was in Tony's shoes, I would feel like I got to have something to brag about or to highlight or promote that's a positive. But man, doing it as a special announcement, that was a misfire. That's all. Just a misfire. I'm sure he learned from it. He's learning on the job, just like I did. You don't come out of the chute having never run a wrestling company or any other kind of company for that matter and get all your decisions right. You learn on the job. You win some, you lose some. This was a loser. It's a bad choice.
It feels like there was a little bit of backlash when it was announced that Ric Flair has signed a multi-year deal with AEW. And I think some of the backlash is because of some off the field controversies. Perhaps other backlash was about, hey, this was supposed to be a quote unquote alternative to WWE, but we've got Big Show tagging with Chris Jericho, and we've also got Edge and Christian, and we've got Miro and Daniel Bryan, and now Ric Flair's here too.
It's feeling more like a recycled WWE than an alternative to it.
I was interested to see what you thought about the Ric Flair announcement, and that it really all hinges on his new energy drink, because we know WCW had, well, I wouldn't go so far as to call it an energy drink, but you guys had a partnership with Surge and doing a lot of product placement. And it feels like we're going to be doing that with Ric Flair's energy drink. I think it'll be at the press conferences and on the announce desks, and maybe they'll have some other in-program content promotion for the energy drink. What'd you think of the announcement? Are you surprised to hear that it's a multi-year deal?
What's interesting, I just saw that clip you put up there. If you're watching along on YouTube, I came out with a Raw energy drink and a Hulk Hogan energy drink. I got both of those drinks into every Walmart in the United States, 3,500 stores for the Raw Energy Hulk Hogan energy drink. So I've got a little tiny bit of experience in this world. It's going to be interesting because distribution. Now I understand this energy drink is probably something a little bit different. I don't know. I think it's from the same people that are behind the cannabis products.
That's right. Chad Bronstein. Yeah.
So it may be appealing to a different target audience. I was going mass market, which is why I went down to Arkansas and pitched the Raw energy drink and Hogan energy drink. And like I said, got them into 3,500 retail outlets. I don't know what kind of distribution this particular product is going to have, but I am going to point out that the cans look very similar, except for one of the colors. The Ric Flair, the Woo drink in the red and yellow looked interestingly similar to the Hulk Hogan energy drink. Just the graphics and the colors and everything else. That's kind of interesting. Here's the thing though. If Tony knew it, maybe the timing didn't allow for this, but if Tony knew that he was going to sign Ric Flair, Tony knew that he had made an announcement that everybody was going, ooh, what's the big announcement? I personally thought it was a streaming announcement. So when it became tickets on sale, I was like, oh, that's not what I was hoping for, I guess, or looking forward to hearing. Why didn't Tony announce Ric Flair? That would have been a big announcement. That would have made people go, okay, regardless of whether you feel like, boy, this is like WWE or not, bringing Ric Flair into the company is a big damn deal. Why would you announce tickets on sale instead of Ric Flair? That's a little confusing to me. Just a bad choice. as far as Rick is concerned, look, first of all, I'm happy for Rick because I don't think I've met anybody that loves the business as much as Ric Flair does.
Yes, sir.
It's a part of who he is. His DNA and chromosomes have changed over the years and are directly connected to the wrestling industry. And I think that's where Rick is happiest, whether it's just being around the talent and being, look, I think Rick enjoys being on camera, but I think more than being on camera, Rick enjoys being near the business.
Yeah.
As opposed to sitting on the outside and looking in. So in that sense, I'm really happy for Rick at this stage of his life to be able to have that part of your life that's important to you kind of back in your life is nothing but a good thing for Rick. As far as the energy drink goes, I don't know, man, a jury's out on that. And again, without knowing what their distribution plan is, because here's the deal. Here's what I learned the hard way, right? Is in my case, I went to Arkansas. I pitched the energy drink products. I got distribution in every Walmart store in the United States, and we still got our ass kicked. Because what I learned the hard way is that Pepsi and Coke and all the other really, really big box energy drink and soft drink manufacturers, because they all, develop their own soft drinks. If you don't have your own distribution or you're not distributed by one of the larger distributors like Coke or Pepsi, for example, and I had eye-level center shelf, which is prime beachfront property in terms of retail blocking and shelf space. That's what we negotiated. Eye-level center aisle. Couldn't ask for better positioning. But what would happen is every Monday or every Wednesday or every Friday, whatever day it was, your Coke and your Pepsi guys that were local would come in and they'd rearrange the shelves. So it didn't matter what the deal said that you had with Walmart. It mattered what the distributors who wanted your shelf space, because we only had 2 SKUs. We didn't have like 6 different varieties or 10 different varieties. We only had 2 SKUs, two items, right? So it became very easy for a Coke or Pepsi distributor to come in and go, oh, there's this raw energy drink. Well, they're going to go down here at the bottom. And I knew that because I would go into stores here in Wyoming. I would go into stores that were carrying the product and I go, wait a minute, that's not where our placement was assigned. We're down here at the bottom where nobody even saw it. But the distribution in the soft drink business is incredibly competitive. Same is true with beer, by the way. Learned the same thing. More so with the energy drink, though. It is a cutthroat, low margin, difficult business unless you've got the right distribution. So this exposure that Woo Energy Drink is getting on television is nothing but a good thing. If they've got the right distribution strategy in place, it's a win-win-win. Rick wins, Tony wins, because from what I've understood, Woo Energy is paying Rick's freight, paying for his salary. So Ric Flair wins, Woo Energy Drink wins, and Tony Khan wins, potentially, depending on how he uses Rick. It's a win-win-win situation. I don't know how anybody could look at it any other way. Time will tell. Look, Rick's got value. Rick coming out and being a mentor, Rick coming out as a spokesperson, a leader of a faction, so to speak, without having to get physical, there is definitely value there. Rick's more over now in mainstream media than he was back in the mid-90s, for sure, early 90s, for sure. There's value there. It's just a matter of how he uses it.
All right, pop quiz, Eric. Somebody was in the news. I want to show you their picture, see what you think. Eric, who is this person?
No.
Evan Courageous. Fortunately made the news. He was arrested for simple assault, but I'll tell you what, if you would have given me 100 chances to guess who that professional wrestler was, I would have said, I don't know, an extra from the Sopranos. I would have never zeroed in on, wow, that's Evan Courageous, or as Tony Schiavone calls him, nothing happening, Evan Courageous. We don't know all the details. Certainly not piling on the guy, just a case of, wow, Where are they now? Did not.
What did he get arrested for? Do you know?
Simple assault. As opposed to complex assault where you whoop somebody's ass with a trig calculator. Hey, three other notes I want to touch on. There was a really great hypothetical idea thrown out there by Bully Ray. It's picked up some traction. I've heard from some people who are pretty smart in the wrestling business who say that, boy, this could be the real shot in the arm that perhaps AEW has been looking for. Bully Ray suggested on Busted Open that if the person behind the devil mask, where we saw that attack a few weeks ago, and now there's been a whodunit, if it turns out to be revealed that that is actually CM Punk, that it would be one of the greatest storyline and works and presentations in the history of wrestling. And I can't help but think, all right, first of all, if that's true, and that is CM Punk, I don't believe it is, but if they're going to reveal that that's CM Punk, this is one of the greatest stories in the history of pro wrestling. Now, if we agree that it's probably not CM Punk, after people have suggested that it's CM Punk, I think almost whoever it is now is going to be a bit of a disappointment to a certain section of the fan base. I remember being in Daly's place in the stands for the AEW pay-per-view where they announced that Tony Khan had signed one of his favorite wrestlers of all time. This was going to be one of the biggest signings in the history of wrestling. And all around me in that section of fans, as we watched that pay-per-view, people were guessing it's Brock Lesnar, it's John Cena. It wound up being Christian. Now we know right now Christian is doing some of the best work of his career. He's been a home run for AEW. But managing expectations is like the key to life. Now that fans are starting to go wild with this theory that, hey, it's CM Punk in the devil mask, which I don't believe it is. It's almost a disappointment no matter who it is now, right?
Yeah, let me back up on Bully's statement though about this being, the best story in the history.
He didn't say that. I said that.
All right. Well, then let me call you out on that. That's bullshit. The only way that that's true is if this would have been planned over the last year. Otherwise, it's just making chicken salad out of chicken shit. There's nothing genius about that.
Well hang on. The result is the same, right? Really happy fans?
It's not. No, it's not.
Okay.
No, it's not.
How's it different?
Because if we're dealing in fantasy land here, so I preface everything I'm saying with I don't believe any of this is real.
Right. Yep.
But I just want to go to what makes a good story, what makes the best story in the history of wrestling or an arc, and what doesn't. If this was something that was conceived initially back when CM Punk first went off on Tony Khan and had his meltdown when, his issues with the Bucks and whoever else he had issues with, if that was all a work and this is the result of it, I'm in. I'll put it over as the best story ever been told. But if this is just making chicken salad out of chicken shit, it doesn't qualify as a story or an arc or a plan. It's just a Band-Aid and a much needed one. In terms of, will it have the same effect? I disagree. I think if it were to be revealed, CM Punk, you're going to have a segment of the audience where definitely CM Punk fans who are going to be overjoyed. I think you're going to hear a collective moan with everybody else. The other 75 or 50% of the audience, whatever it is, I don't know what it is. Those who aren't dyed in the wool CM Punk fans. And by the way, based on the kind of stuff I see on social media, there's a lot more people that aren't CM Punk fans than are. The ones that are tend to be very vocal, but there's a lot of, I think the audience is split. Maybe it's, you're going to hear such a collective groan if it is. And neither one of us think it will be.
Two more things, then we'll wrap it up. It was recently announced not too long ago that the NWA and our old pal Billy Corgan had secured a television deal with CW for not one, but two shows, one being NWA Power and the other being a reality show, a behind the scenes look. And it's been written that the reality show will be self-funded by Billy Corgan. And there's other rumor and innuendo that perhaps the television deal might wind up becoming a streaming on the CW app deal. Apparently there were some people who had their feelings hurt over at the CW. Again, this is all according to a report from your old pal, Nick Houseman, where
he's not my pal. Don't say that.
Okay. He's my pal. On the pay-per-view, their most recent pay-per-view, which was rumored to have not that many buys, not piling on, just saying there was a lot of negativity surrounding that show. But at some point during the broadcast, they did something I've never seen before. I guess I'm going to describe it as a cocaine spot. They did a cutaway and you saw Jim Mitchell and his band of merry misfits snorting a substance on camera. And allegedly folks at the CW did not like that. Now, the rumor and innuendo is that Billy Corgan okayed this and pushed for it to be on the pay-per-view, felt strongly that it should be on the pay-per-view. It was there. And the rumor, according to Nick Houseman, is that perhaps the television opportunity with the CW is at least now in a little bit of jeopardy because some people had some upset feelings. So first of all, let me ask you this. Do you think the differentiation of it's on pay-per-view, it's on TV, does that matter in this instance? And if we all agree that this is fantasy and it's all story, this is an industry where we've had people sacrificed and there have been murders and there have been, miscarriage storylines and abused wife storylines and all these really poor taste ideas. A cocaine spot on a wrestling show? What say you?
It's weird, isn't it? How wrestling has still to this day, despite how mainstream, how large it's become, how powerful it's become, still finds residence in this weird spot in television where certain things are just off limits.
Yes.
If we're going to watch a scripted series, I don't know how many of them I've watched where you see somebody doing cocaine.
So many.
Or shooting heroin or doing whatever within the context of a scripted presentation. But yet when wrestling steps outside of the bounds, and I don't even know where the boundaries are. I don't think anybody else does either. There's no definitive right or wrong. It's a matter of taste and judgment at a particular point in time. But in this particular case, you've got people doing cocaine on camera. What's probably not real cocaine. We all know that. But you're using cocaine to advance a character or storyline. You got people throwing flags. I think a lot of that has to do with the reason why beer companies still are hesitant to this day are hesitant to advertise in wrestling because there's still either a real or perceived component of the audience, too large of a component of the audience that are children, right? And that's where I think the gray area is. Some television executives recognize it for what it is. Some of them are still like, oh no, we don't want to be associated with that. They're fearful of it. But I think, TV versus pay-per-view, it doesn't fucking matter. It's still the NWA. It's still your brand. It's still your characters that we see on TV. And yes, pay-per-views are seen on television. So I think to find any kind of comfort where you're able to get away with things, big things, controversial things, like a cocaine spot, but you're going to be allowed to get away with it because it's on pay-per-view and not on television is naive as hell. That's just inexperience, not having dealt with television networks, not ever having been in a position where you've got a television partner that actually cares about what you do. It's just a reflection of, it's just naivete. It's all it is. And a fair amount of stupidity because you're bringing that attention to yourself in a way that's, you got people dropping dead in the streets from snorting blow, from fentanyl. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know Billy Corgan. I've had lunch with him and spent a little bit of time with him, but that was just flat out freaking stupid. Especially you're trying to you're trying to emerge. You're trying to break out of YouTube and actually get a television deal. And you feel strongly about a cocaine spot, which, by the way, didn't get anybody over anyway. What was the purpose of it? You're going to get Jim Mitchell over? Are you kidding me? You guys never been over in the 20 years he's been in business. How is this going to make a difference? The more I think about it, the more pissed off I get, because it's the kind of thing that really damages the wrestling genre for television. It's just like people are inventing ways to screw stuff up. It's like, I don't know. Let's change the subject.
You got half hot there.
I am hot. I hate when people blow opportunities. They're hard to come by, folks. They're really freaking hard to come by. Why would you do something that you know is going to blow up in your face? And if you don't know what's going to blow up in your face, get out of the business. You shouldn't be in it. My God.
Oh, God.
No, really. Come on.
My phone's going to blow up.
I mean, you asked a question. I'm sorry. Let's move on. I didn't want to get this hot.
All right. We're going to put a bow on this show as we're going overtime with you guys. First of all, I want to give a shout out to everybody who decided to come hang out with us today. Little Jimmy Sorensen, hadn't seen you in a while. Little Jimmy, glad you're here. Glad Coach Keith was here. Man, we got so many folks who were in the group chat. Greatly appreciate Aaron and everybody, Bobby, and shout out to all you guys hanging out with us on a Monday morning. What's up, David and everybody else? I wanted to ask you about this clip. I guess it was like an investors type call, and Lachlan Murdoch was answering questions. And one of the questions was about the WWE deal, and that Fox is going to let SmackDown fly the coop. Of course, we know they're going to wind up being on USA. And man, he was pretty honest in saying that Fox just didn't get the type of return on investment for WWE that they had hoped for. And they also said that they weren't getting the retransmission revenue that they had hoped for by having WWE, which is what the little syndicated networks would pay for. So like locally, our Fox affiliate is WZDX. They call it Fox 54. And everybody, has to pony up to have that station. If you have a cable system, whether it's, Comcast or Xfinity or whatever you want to call it, or you've got satellite, whoever it may be. So the gist is, hey man, we just didn't get the type of return on investment we were hoping for. We knew that, going in. I mean, if they were making money hand over fist, they wouldn't have let the thing go in the first place. But I don't know. It strikes me another way when you actually see it and hear it from the horse's mouth, pardon the pun. My God, they just didn't get the return. And now that information is public. We all knew it. It was obvious, but it feels different when they just hit us over the head with it. What'd you think of this statement from Mr. Murdoch?
Well, I understood it, and that's right. Been traditionally one of the biggest challenges in the professional industry, which is perhaps why I get so hot when Billy Corgan does a stupid cocaine spot, because it damages the entire industry. When it makes news in the variety, when it bubbles up in the Los Angeles community, because the TV industry in Los Angeles and New York is way smaller than people think, way smaller, right? It's the kind of thing that makes it difficult for professional wrestling to enjoy the same benefits and latitudes that a lot of other general entertainment programs have, including content, including advertising, which we've talked about ad nauseum on Strictly Business and here on 83 Weeks with You over the years. That, yeah, you get a great rating, but it doesn't have the value to advertisers as other forms of entertainment do, because professional wrestling, unfortunately, to this day, despite the major, growth and success that WWE has had in making it more palatable for a broader array of mainstream advertisers, it is still challenged by the fact that wrestling isn't fish nor fowl. It's not drama, it's not comedy, it's not sports, but it is drama, it is comedy, and it is sports. It's weird, right? And because it's weird, people tend to kind of back away from it a little bit because they can't really define it. And those who don't know why wrestling is as popular as it is, back off even further. Those who realize that wrestling is very popular and a lot of people watch it, are still hesitant to advertise in it. So the value you get for the ratings you deliver are consistently lower than other forms of entertainment. That's the challenge with wrestling, right? It's the WWE has that challenge to this day quite clearly because they were delivering ratings. They were getting some of the highest. SmackDown was outperforming everything else on network television often. They were getting the audience, but they couldn't sell that audience to advertisers. Same is probably true with Raw. Same is probably true with AEW, perhaps even more so because it's new and less familiar and less established. And guys like Billy Corgan don't help because they're doing stupid shit. And people don't differentiate. Oh, well, that's just Billy Corgan and NWA. In the television community, in the ad sales community, wrestling's wrestling, folks. Now, more people recognize WWE for what it is than everything else that's out there, but it's still got that same challenge. What I do find interesting, as you pointed out very clearly and smartly, is that Lachlan Murdoch came out and said it publicly.
Wow.
That's that's the kind of thing that you don't necessarily come out and say because it taints the market going forward.
Yes.
Well, if Fox can't do it, why do I want to? Maybe I'm not really as comfortable giving this a try because if Fox, as powerful as they are and as sophisticated as they are, and the ad sales team that they have, and all the other resources that Fox has, if they can't make it work, why should I give it a try? That's what I find the most interesting.
It's unbelievable to me. I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. There's going to be a lot of moving parts in the wrestling business in the coming years and just really in the next 12 months. I can't wait to see how it all shakes out. Next week, we're going to be talking about business and the wrestling business when we pay tribute to a legend who is maybe not gotten his just due from a wrestling fan perspective. We're talking about Ted Turner next week. We'll talk about the man behind the name and what a business, what an empire he built, your relationship with him, maybe misconceptions about him, his larger than life personality, a true maverick and a renegade, if you will, in the business space. Next week, our topic is Mr. Ted Turner. Today is our 295th episode, Eric. So we are looking strong at episode 300 next month here on the program. In the meantime, we would love to be talking about your product or service. If you're looking for men that are 25 to 54 years old, there's no better place to advertise than right here with us. You hear some of the same sponsors week after week for years. Why is that? Well, because it really works. And if you're looking for dudes, we got them. Find out how affordable it can be for us to talk about your product here at advertisewitheric.com. You can also pick up Eric's new book over on Amazon. While you're there, be sure to add our pal David Sahadi's book to your cart as well. Throw us a like, hit the subscribe button anywhere you enjoy podcasts. And if you've got a question about Ted Turner, it's easy to ask it across any of our platforms. It's 83 Weeks on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That's at 83 Weeks. You can ask a question about Ted Turner there. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel. It's one thing to hear the show. It's another to see it. We've got lots of visual aids for you as well. It's 83 Weeks on youtube.com. Eric, I never know what to expect when we sit down and click record, but we got to talk about current events. You got half hot at Billy Corgan. We got to take a look at the Mr. McMahon character, talk about creative control differences between Hulk Hogan and Bret Hart. And more importantly, we talked about an iconic moment in the Monday Night War history. Rick Rude on both shows the same night. It was fun to watch this with you the first time ever. What'd you think?
It was fun to watch. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the Vince McMahon, Jim Ross interviews. And by the way, I'm happy to share the knowledge with you about why aged meat is so much better than non-aged meat.
You learn something new every day.
We live to enlighten here on 83 Weeks.
No peeking, Eric. Be sure to check out social media later this week. Eric Bischoff, This Is Your Life, coming up sooner rather than later. No, don't do that. We'll see you next week right here on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free Shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.